I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301, Inviting Thanos to Drink Tea. After obtaining the Supreme Intelligence, the Kree civilization fell into Lin Hao's hands. He deliberately eliminated only the Kree legions, sparing the majority of the population on Hala. These were spoils of war and future labor. Furthermore, Hala was only the Kree's home planet. Millions of years of interstellar warfare had already spread their population far beyond their home planet, leaving the population on their home planet minimal. "We'll continue as we did before," Lin Hao told his new recruit. "Since your internet connection can reach Earth, you can continue to control the Kree civilization. In addition to cooperating with my research, I'm not controlling them." The new recruit, clearly unaware of the great demon's temper, defended himself weakly. "I'm promoting their development. Are you lecturing me?" Lin Hao glared at the new recruit. "Master, rest assured. I will continue to control them and make the entire Kree civilization serve you." The new recruit immediately backed down. Not everyone is worthy of being the great demon's minion or tool. Trash like the Supreme Intelligence and American capitalists would be honored to be given the opportunity to be his pawn. First, restore order on Hala. Then, send a notice to all forces in the universe that the Kree's territory will be taken over by Earth's SUMARD. Any who dare to intervene will have their civilization destroyed. The Temple II had already left Hala's system. Thanos had originally come here because of the Power Stone, but after witnessing Lin Hao's immense strength, he lacked confidence in his ability to wrest it from him. So, Thanos planned to first obtain the other Infinity Stones. Then, with the help of the Infinity Gauntlet, he might be able to defeat Lin Hao and seize the Power Stone from him. He hadn't gone far with this thought when Ebony Maw suddenly rushed in with a report. "Great Master, that Earthling has posted a video online, specifically for you." Thanos, seated on the throne, frowned in concentration, and said in a deep voice, "Release him." Ebony Maw quickly activated the ship system to project a virtual image of the powerful Earthling whose battle had rocked the universe. He was still dressed in a white robe, clutching several glowing gems in his hands, blue, green, red, and purple. The blue one was the Space Stone, the green one was the Time Stone, the red one was the Reality Stone, and the purple one was the Power Stone. The only missing gems were the Soul Stone, which was known to be on Vormir but which Lin Hao would not retrieve, and the Mind Stone, the source of which was not specified in the movie. The Space Stone came from a SHIELD warehouse, the Time Stone came from the now-vanished non-ancient one, the Power Stone came from Morag, and the Reality Stone was retrieved by Odin from the Dark Elves' territory. Ever since discovering this was the Marvel Universe, for the first decade or so, Lin Hao had always considered defeating Thanos one of his life goals. Now, looking back, he felt quite emotional. In just over 2 years, America had become chaotic, and Lin Hao had grown powerful. The law of conservation of energy is indeed true. "Thank you so much, fellow American, for your selfless dedication," Lin Hao, in the projection, sighed, something the aliens wouldn't understand and that would drive Americans on Earth crazy. Then, he addressed the recipient, "Thanos, Thanos, do you recognize this? I know you want these things. And I know why you want them." The projection of Lin Hao flashed a playful smile. "Come to Hala Planet. I'll wait for you, or you'll never get them." With that, the projection vanished. Outrageous. He's so arrogant. As the saying goes, when the master insults the servant dies. Seeing Lin Hao's commanding tone, Ebony Maw immediately showed his anger. If it were a weaker opponent, Ebony Maw would have dispatched his men or personally dispatched them without a word. But after witnessing Lin Hao's strength, he only dared to speak. Although his superpower was indeed mouth-to-mouth, allowing him to control intelligent beings through speech, turn around and return to Hala Planet, Thanos said firmly. Ever since witnessing the destruction of his home planet, Titan, Thanos has held a firm ideal, to contribute to the survival of the universe, even if it means damnation or being labeled a villain. To achieve his ideal, Thanos vowed to overcome all obstacles and hardships, unwavering in his resolve. But now that 4 Infinity Stones have fallen into the hands of powerful Earthlings, even if he finds the other 2, his chances are slim. Thanos will not give up, nor will he flee, so he chooses to face it head-on. "Master," Ebony Maw managed only to utter, "Think again." "Shut up, and returned to Hala immediately. Not long after, the Temple II reappeared in space beyond Hala and received a message from the Supreme Intelligence, informing Thanos of Lin Hao's current location. I'll go alone. Thanos flew directly to the hatch on his throne. Once in space, the throne raised a protective energy shield, protecting Thanos as he descended towards Hala. Seeing his boss leave, General Corvus Glaive, second only to Thanos in power, had a flicker in his eyes, evidently having a new idea. Previously, Thanos had been incredibly powerful, so powerful that he could barely think of anything else. But now, someone even more powerful had appeared, someone with ulterior motives. If they fight, Corvus Glaive couldn't suppress the thought, his eyes brimming with anticipation. This must happen. I want to see rivers of blood. Thanos followed the coordinates and arrived at a verdant hill outside the Kree capital. The vegetation on Hara differed markedly from Earth, yet it was still dominated by green, lush and vibrant. Atop the hill stood a newly built pavilion, its architectural style completely different from that of the Kree capital beyond. Inside, Lin Hao sat at a stone table, fiddling with a purple clay teapot on a small red clay stove. Steam rose, releasing a fragrant aroma of tea. Seeing this scene, even though Thanos didn't understand Chinese culture, he felt the other party's courtesy. After the throne landed, Thanos stood and removed his armor. He casually tossed his suit of armor, made of material no less powerful than vibranium, to the ground, along with his helmet, which served the same function as the one on the King of 10,000 Irons. Lin Hao glanced over at him, then extended his hand across the stone table, saying, "Sit down." He spoke in Chinese, but with his rudimentary understanding of the rules, he could already transform translation magic into passive skill. Whatever he said, other intelligent species, even non-intelligent creatures, could understand it perfectly. Thanos stepped forward and sat on the vacant stone bench. To accommodate his stature, the pavilion, stone table, and stone bench were built large. Even the teacup he used was oversized. "Try our civilization's specialties first." Lin Hao poured Thanos a cup of tea. Earth civilization, Thanos couldn't contain his curiosity. Besides his immense military prowess, Thanos possessed an exceptional intelligence and the talents of a leading scientist. In the film universe, Thanos, in particular, became a philosopher exploring the relationship between life and the universe. Therefore, he was deeply curious about the civilization that could produce a powerhouse like Lin Hao, because the abilities Lin Hao employed were completely incomprehensible to him. This was a scientist's uncontrollable instinct. Because Ancient One and Odin had protected Earth so well, the Star Network contained very little information about Earth, mostly old news from hundreds or thousands of years ago. Now that Thanos could personally consult Lin Hao, he naturally wouldn't miss the opportunity. Chapter 302, A New Path for Thanos. Comments with caution, or I'll be the one drinking tea. Earth civilization. Lin Hao poured himself a cup of tea and shook his head. No, we're just one nation on Earth, the Chinese civilization. How could the civilizations on your planet be so ununited? Thanos couldn't hide his confusion. How could they enter the universe without a unified foundation? Are the other tribes on Earth so backward? English is the lingua franca in the Marvel universe, so Thanos could accurately express his meaning using English vocabulary. He used the word tribe instead of nation because he understood the difference. A nation is an organizational structure that emerges after intelligent beings have developed their civilization to a certain level. Before the emergence of nations, at most, they form tribes. If there were other nations on Earth besides this Chinese civilization, it wouldn't make sense for them to watch China's interstellar expansion without a large-scale war breaking out. It simply doesn't make sense. Thanos has witnessed countless civilizations and slaughtered the intelligent beings within them. Many of the civilizations I've encountered, before reaching interstellar space, wars raged between nations over resources for continued development. This process, like raising a goo, determined the winner. Only the victor gained the right to exploit the entire planet's resources, thus propelling their civilization to the interstellar stage. Unless other civilizations on a planet were significantly behind the most advanced, no one would pass up the opportunity to reach interstellar space. This wasn't just about advancing civilization, it was also about their own survival. In the path of national competition, failure to advance meant regression. Joint development was certainly a path, but before civilizations merged, it was more of a wishful thinking. Not bad. 10 years ago, we could only hold on to third or fourth place, but Earth had some aliens visiting. Lin Hao took a sip of tea. No wonder, Thanos suddenly realized, picking up his teacup and imitating his example. A normally developing civilization typically undergoes this goo-raising process, either utterly destroyed in the process or led by a goo king to interstellar space. But the universe is full of miracles and surprises. It's not uncommon for spacecraft from advanced civilizations to crash land on the planets of less advanced civilizations. If backward indigenous civilizations could seize the opportunity, there's a reasonable chance they could rapidly upgrade. While people on other continents were still living in primitive tribes, consuming raw meat and drinking blood, the tribes that received gifts were able to build aircraft, naturally eliminating the need for breeding goo. Actually, the first country to make contact with aliens wasn't China, but another technologically advanced nation. They had already come into contact with the Kree and Skrulls 20 years ago, and had ample opportunities to acquire their technology. Lin Hao's comment once again puzzled Thanos. I don't understand. You'll have plenty of time to understand later. Lin Hao raised his head, drained his tea, and smiled. That country is why I summoned you here. You need my help. Thanos was bewildered, offering a resigned smile. With your strength, destroying that country is a piece of cake. How could a nation that couldn't even leave its home planet compare to the Kree, who had dominated the universe for millions of years? Because I want to destroy not only this country, but also the very ideas they pride themselves on, Lin Hao said frankly. Does this country have special significance? Thanos realized that even with the other party's strength, even such a plan was necessary. Clearly, there was something wrong with this country. It wasn't necessarily about sheer power, it could very well have some special significance. After all, everyone's actions carry a purpose. Even if they appear to be casual acts of boredom, the subconscious is at work. Thanos is not Deadpool. Despite his immense power, he ultimately failed to grasp the true nature of the Marvel Universe. If it were Deadpool, he'd immediately understand why Lin Hao acted this way. Okay, now, let's talk about your ideal. Lin Hao set down his teacup, speaking like a life mentor. Come on, tell me your dream. You witnessed the demise of Titan and have witnessed many civilizations. You realize that as life in the universe continues to grow, resource pressures are increasing, ultimately leading to the extinction of civilizations and the destruction of planets. Over the years, you've undoubtedly witnessed many civilizations extinguished by the conflict between population and resources. So, you've developed a dream, to become the judge, harness the 6 Infinity Stones, and randomly erase half of all life in the universe. Just because I respect you as a strong person doesn't mean I enjoy having my thoughts pried into. Thanos' expression darkened. He straightened his body, spread his legs, clenched his fists, and placed them on his knees, ready to strike. Lin Hao simply smiled and pointed at him. Thanos felt his mind losing control of his body. Although he hadn't learned the immobilization technique, Lin Hao could already use the knowledge he had acquired to achieve the same effect. Different paths lead to the same end, and one understanding leads to 100. I don't need to peer into your thoughts, because I've seen you in another universe. In that universe, 7 years later, he gathered all 6 Infinity Stones and, with a snap of his fingers, wiped out half of all life in the universe. Lin Hao wasn't lying. Whether it was the movie he'd seen in his previous life or the one he'd seen in the Marvel editorial office a few months ago, it was all set in the universe numbered Earth 199,999. Did he succeed? Or fail? With Thanos' knowledge, he naturally understood quantum mechanics and parallel universes. According to my plan, success will destroy the Infinity Stones. Since Lin Hao already knew what he was going to do, Thanos didn't bother to hide his thoughts. First you succeeded, then you failed. Because the survivors hadn't gotten over the pain of their loved ones' deaths, they tried every possible means to travel to other universes to retrieve the 6 Infinity Stones. Then, with a snap of their fingers, they brought back the lives you had erased, and you, Lin Hao pointed at Thanos and laughed. Not only did you work in vain, but you also became a clown-like villain. I don't care. Thanos cared nothing for his own honor or even his own life. He simply wanted to pursue his ideals. Upon hearing of his alternate universe self's failure, he immediately changed his plan. He should kill everyone capable of traveling to other universes as well. It was just a matter of snapping his fingers a little more. Or adding an extra rule to the first snap. Seeing Thanos' expression change, Lin Hao guessed his thoughts and unabashedly mocked him. Tisk, is this the limit of your IQ? If you can't solve a problem, eliminate the person who created it. If you can't cure an illness, kill all the patients. You're really clever. Is this the level of those so-called cursed of knowledge? If you didn't know, You'd think they were idiots who'd never experienced life but were still trying to figure out its meaning. Enough, Thanos said, feeling rather irritated. If someone less qualified had questioned his ideals, he wouldn't have bothered to pay attention. But Lin Hao was different. Not only was he formidable, but Thanos also sensed a kindred spirit in him. If you want to convince me, present your solution. Otherwise, you'll have no choice but to kill me. Thanos wasn't a paranoid person who couldn't accept opposing opinions. It was just that Tony Stark, whom he admired in the movies, simply couldn't find a solution to his dilemma. To be honest, my method may not necessarily succeed, because this is a path that no one has successfully taken. It is unknown whether any alien civilization has ever succeeded in the real universe, but this is the universe created by Marvel editors, and it is absolutely impossible for any civilization to succeed. Let alone success, Marvel editors don't even dare to draw it. Even if they did, it would be slander, smear, and ridicule with extreme prejudice. Lin Hao restrained his ridicule and said solemnly, but this is a path that can theoretically succeed. It can not only solve the contradiction between resources and population, but also solve the social contradictions among intelligent species. It is not a blockade of thinking under the control of the supreme wisdom, but it can actively guide the subjective initiative of the entire species. There will be an uplifting social atmosphere and an indomitable and tenacious group quality. This path can lead the entire species and even the entire three-dimensional universe to a higher level. This chapter is a bit difficult to write, and it has to be implicit. Chapter 303 Nick Fury seeking external help. Far from the planet Hala, deep in the sky, a brown nebula lies dotted with countless galaxies. A spaceship traverses the sky. This is a Skrull ship, and on board, besides the Skrulls who have fled to Earth, are two Earthlings, one black and one white. The black one is Nick Fury, and the white one is Mike Will. Nick Fury, having fallen prey to Lin Hao's scheme, has been caught by the World Security Council secretly funding the Skrulls for 20 years. He foresees completely losing the trust of the American leadership. Furthermore, having been deceived by Lin Hao into believing Hydra is a powerful supernatural being, he plans to use the Skrull ship to search for Hydra on an alien planet. To regain the trust of the American leadership and to protect the America he loves, Nick Fury, realizing his lack of strength, craves supernatural powers. Thus, he embarks on a quest to find Hydra. Because the Skrulls, disguised as SHIELD scientists, have dropped a locator into the Corn Monolith, finding Hydra's planet is easy. Nick Fury arrived at the desolate planet a short time later aboard a Skrull spaceship. He encountered Mike Will, a member of the exploration team sent by NASA 10 years earlier using the Corn Monolith, and his beloved Hydra. Hydra did indeed possess 9 heads and superpowers, but unfortunately, its strength was modest, and even the fleeing Skrulls could easily defeat it with their technological equipment. Black Egg realized he had been deceived. Natasha and the fake captain might not have lied, but the intelligence they received must have been edited, with someone inserting the false information that Hydra could grant powerful superpowers. Half-truths, even 9 truths and 1 falsehood, are common tactics in intelligence warfare. Captain, look at this. The Skrull Grave burst into Taros' office, his personal terminal in hand, eagerly displaying the news from the Starlink. It was the footage of Lin Hao single-handedly destroying the Kree army. Chief, great. The Kree have been destroyed. We're safe and can return home. Grave, who had come to deliver the news, was overjoyed. The annihilation of a great enemy for hundreds of thousands of years was akin to the exhilaration of revenge. Talos, at first delighted, then agonized. This man is also from Earth, and by the looks of it, he's Chinese. He might not be willing to return our homeworld to us. The Skrull leader had been entangled with Nick Fury for 20 years, hoping he could help them find a habitat on Earth. This hope had become an obsession. Talos had invested so much in Nick Fury, the sunk costs so great that he was unwilling to give up. He had subconsciously begun to exclude other possibilities, exaggerating the difficulty of other options. But we have to try, right? Grave argued. The Chinese on Earth don't have enough people to absorb all the worlds occupied by the Kree. They'll need at least hundreds of years to reproduce. We can definitely contact them and exchange our acquired technology, intelligence, and the distribution of new resource planets. Enough, Talos shouted angrily. Grave, I'm the leader. Grave stared at Talos in astonishment, his eyes filled with disappointment. This leader had been overly emotional, even forgetting his own position, brainwashed into imitating America. But America on Earth has always been about taking more than it can chew, acting like a bandit. Why hasn't Talus learned from that? Talus, you'll regret this. Grave slammed the door and left. Returning to the cabin where his tribe lived, several Skrulls who supported Grave came up to him, eagerly demanding, "What's up?" Did the leader agree? "Talus doesn't deserve to be our leader," Grave roared. "He's completely siding with the Earthlings." Remembering Lin Hao, who single-handedly destroyed the Kree on the Starlink, Grave quickly changed his tune. "No, he's completely sided with the Americans. Is he crazy?" a Skrull shouted. "Is that nigger his father? Why would he listen to him so much? No, we can't let Talus continue to lead, or the Skrulls will be completely destroyed. Glaive, we support you as the new leader." Glaive looked around at the Skrulls around him, nodded solemnly, and laid out his plan. To maintain his position, Talus will definitely suppress the news. This is our chance to win back his people. The ship will soon arrive at Macro 4. Once the nigger and his men disembark, we'll seize it and announce to everyone in our tribe that the Kree have been destroyed. Then, we'll propose negotiations with the Chinese on Earth to return our homeworld. As Glaive predicted, Talus didn't reveal the news of Lin Hao's destruction to his people. Perhaps he simply needed a little time to figure out his next move, but deep down, he simply refused to admit that the choices he'd made over the past 20 years had been a failed gamble. Talus kept the news secret, leaving Nick Fury unaware that a single Earthling had single-handedly destroyed the formidable Kree army. Therefore, he remained eagerly anticipating the destination of his journey. Hydra's power can't save America from this crisis. Earth wasn't connected to the Starlink network, so Black Egg had no idea that Earth's status had been upgraded since his departure. America now faced more than just a crisis, but a critical moment of survival. But if we gain the power of the Macro, America can not only survive this crisis, but also achieve greatness once again, greater than ever before. Nick Fury knew he had lost the trust of the American higher-ranking officials. He had to find the consortium bosses something they couldn't refuse to win back their trust and become their beloved dog once again. But how can you convince these aliens called Macro? Mike Will, who had been sent by NASA 10 years earlier to explore the space behind the Korn monolith, had finally recovered from the excitement of his rescue. He learned from Nick Fury about the major events that had occurred in the decade since he left Earth, focusing on what had happened in America. Selected by NASA for the exploration program, Mike Will was clearly a staunch patriot. Hearing from Nick Fury about America's crisis, he, too, wanted to contribute. "Because I have information they can't refuse," Nick Fury said with a mysterious smile, his memory returning to his first mission in 1968. It was truly an unforgettable experience. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, The Extraordinary Dragon Full of Pride and Prejudice. The Skrull ship quickly arrived at Macro 4, the Macro's fourth homeworld. Having already depleted the resources of 3 planets, the aliens were now on their 4th. The planet ahead of the ship was covered in large patches of brown, yellow, and even black. The green vegetation on the land had largely vanished, and the blue waters were extensively polluted. "Are you really going to contact the Macro?" Talus warned Nick Fury, frowning as he approached him. The Macro are a swarm of locusts. While they are individually formidable, they rely entirely on plundering resources and technology to develop their civilization, and they have no moral compunction. "Don't worry, I'm sure I can convince them," Nick Fury said confidently. "Okay, just be careful." Seeing his stubbornness, Talus gave up his persuasion. A moment later, the Skrulls contacted the Macro on the planet, informing them that they would be sending a shuttle to the interior of the planet. With the Macro's permission, Nick Fury and Mike Will boarded the shuttle and entered Macro 4. The notorious space locusts are known only for plundering, not construction. Consequently, there are no prosperous cities on the planet, only scattered tribes with crude architectural styles, primarily consisting of large stone temples. Interestingly, these temples resemble opera houses in New York's Chinatown, imbuing Westerners with Eastern cultural symbols. Even the Macro people are depicted as dragons, but the head isn't a lizard or dinosaur, but a horse-faced head with fins on its cheeks. Their snake-like bodies feature arms and legs on the upper half, a long tail, and naturally, a pair of wings on their backs. Over 2,000 years ago, A Macro spacecraft crash-landed on Earth in China, leaving several Macro people stranded. Marvel's editors then attributed the Chinese worship of the dragon totem to the Macro people, implicitly implying that the Chinese worshipped the Macro people as gods, and this led to their dragon totem worship. This is not only slanderous but also profoundly ignorant. Our worship of the dragon totem dates back more than 2,000 years. One of these Macro people, known as Fantastic Dragon, was later controlled by the Mandarin and used to help fight Iron Man. Tony Stark even developed a special anti-Fantastic Dragon armor for him, making him one of Iron Man's favorite villains. So what happened to Fantastic Dragon, so powerful that he was even the origin of Chinese dragon totem worship? He was transformed by Reed, the rubber man from the Fantastic Four, who sealed his dragon power, shrunk down to human form, and integrated into human society, becoming the head chef of the Chinese restaurant in the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four's base. Isn't America powerful? Even if you're the source of totem worship, you'd have to become a chef in America. So you understand why the Macro people are depicted as a locust-like civilization? Marvel's editors want to attribute the actions of their own people to potential enemies. They want to subconsciously instill in their readers that following this country is a dead end, and that humanity's future lies in America. Interestingly, some idiots actually fell for it. Nick Fury and Mike Will were taken by the Macro people to the headquarters of their most powerful tribe. Indeed, although the Macro civilization had existed for many years, it remained fragmented, relying solely on its own immense power to plunder resources from other planets and enslave their populations. Arriving at the Stone Temple, a 10-meter-tall green dragon sat on the stone throne. He was the leader of this tribe and the most powerful being in the entire Macro civilization, thus enabling him to dominate the other tribes. However, this green dragon, named Gu, had been deeply troubled for the past 2,000 years because his son had disappeared. Not only had his son disappeared, but so had the holy son of the Macro people. The Macro people struggled with childbearing, yet they believed in the power of strength. Not every dragon possessed great potential, and the missing son was the most powerful of his descendants, the hope for the continuation of the family line and the maintenance of tribal supremacy. The holy son was even more important, possessing a power the Macro people hadn't awakened in years, the ability to grant wishes. This powerful power involved the laws of cause and effect. The holy son of the Macro people is named Nian. The bad-tempered Gu leaned against the back of the stone chair, half-opened his eyelids and glanced at the two little guys, and said in a lazy voice, "Are you Skrulls? Why don't you show your true identity when you see me, your highness, the noble King Gu?" The flexible Nick Fury immediately stepped forward and bowed slightly. "This is what we originally look like. We are not Skrulls, assholes." Gu was furious and roared, "For the sake of the Skrulls, I am willing to take the time to see you. How dare you let this little character from nowhere waste my precious time? Come on, drag them away and burn them to death." An 8-meter-tall brown dragon immediately walked out of the stone hall and was about to obey the order to drag the two little guys out. Nick Fury immediately shouted, "Your Majesty, I know a Macro named Makun and where he is now." "Wait." Gu stood up in shock, strode down from his throne, and stared down at Nick Fury. "Say it again." Makun wasn't Gu's son, but he had traveled with his son and the Son of God on the spaceship that year, and was likely still with him. Regardless, this was the first time in over 2,000 years that he had heard from a lost member of his tribe. Facing Gu's gaze, Nick Fury remained calm, looking up calmly and looking directly into Gu's eyes. As the king of agents, he could handle such a small situation. 42 years ago, I met Makun on Earth. He told me he was from Macro 4. It was my first alien encounter, so I remember it clearly. Nick Fury's memories flash back to 1968. The operation he participated in was indeed a rescue operation organized by SHIELD against Nazi scientists. As a newly enlisted soldier and a dark-skinned individual, Nick Fury was fortunately chosen as a cannon fodder. The first half of the operation was as he had described to the Five Nations Joint Investigation Team. They were attacked by the Winter Soldier, suffering heavy losses, and ultimately, he was the only one to return to America. However, he never shared the second half with anyone. This was because he encountered a mysterious alien who, despite appearing to be a dragon, spoke English and claimed to be a Macro from the planet Macro 4. Chapter 305, Nick Fury's ball-selling behavior. 1968 was a day Nick Fury would never forget. It wasn't because it was his first mission, a day that exposed him to the brutality of combat, nor was it because it was the Chinese New Year. While the brutality of combat is certainly a lifelong memory for a new soldier, it only became a recollection and a topic of conversation for Nick Fury over drinks. The real reason he remained so secretive about his experiences that day was because, having narrowly escaped death, he encountered the legendary alien. As so many legends tell, Nick Fury, having survived the battle, slipped through an ice hole and slid into a vast crevasse deep within the Himalayas. There, he encountered a 7 to 8 meter long, four-limbed, winged dragon-like creature. Speaking fluent English, it claimed to be an alien from the planet Makru 4. 18-year-old Nick Fury was terrified, believing he was about to be devoured by the terrifying alien beast. However, the alien, known as Makru, not only didn't devour him but also showed him a way out of the mountain. If that were all, it would have been a bizarre experience at best. As Nick Fury encountered more and more aliens, this experience, aside from the uniqueness of being a first, proved unremarkable. However, Nick Fury not only escaped the Himalayas alive, he also struck a deal with an alien called the Makun. The Makun granted Nick Fury a few superpowers, not much, simply physical development, enhanced physical fitness, and slowed his aging. The price was that after his departure, Nick Fury would have to find the other Makru people stranded on Earth and inform them that he was trapped within the Himalayas. If you were lucky enough to encounter aliens from another planet, he could have them deliver a message to Makru 4. If successful, the Makru people would offer him even greater benefits, such as enhanced superpowers and an extended lifespan. Generally speaking, for ordinary people who encounter such a miraculous event and receive tangible benefits, it's hard not to try to fulfill the other party's demands in the hope of gaining even greater supernatural powers. In too many stories, villains or protagonists spend decades, even centuries, completing these missions, gaining the opportunity to transcend the mundane. Nick Fury, however, is different. He suffers from severe paranoia and a need for control, making it difficult for him to trust anyone, whether earthling or alien. His rise to become the king of agents demonstrates his intelligence and ability. As his experience grows, he gradually realizes that the Makru he encountered wasn't trapped in the mountain by accident, as he claimed, but was clearly sealed there by a powerful entity. If he followed their instructions, it would undoubtedly bring disaster to Earth. As the dominant power on Earth, America's interests would suffer if it suffered a disaster. Nick Fury would not put America's interests in jeopardy for a personal gain that might not materialize. He is a staunch patriot. Though a black man living in an era steeped in racial discrimination, he possesses an unwavering white heart and is dedicated to serving America. But as he grew older and rose in rank, Nick Fury developed his own perspective, believing that only his own way could best protect his beloved America. That's why he hadn't fulfilled his promise to Makun when he encountered the Skrulls 20 years prior, but now he had personally traveled to the distant planet of Makun IV. Everything was for America. Makun is trapped within a mountain high on Earth, seemingly restrained by a supernatural force, Nick Fury confessed to Goo, looking up. He also told me to search for other members of his tribe who were lost on Earth. Presumably, they crashed together. All of this was true, and even some of the reasons Makun hadn't mentioned at the time were simply inferred by Nick Fury to fit the logic of his words. Unfortunately, I've spent years searching, but haven't been able to find any other Makun, the old man said, his expression unwavering. I suspect the others are likely imprisoned as well. Where's Earth? Goo demanded eagerly. Without hesitation, Nick Fury produced a mobile device containing Earth's coordinates. As we all know, in a universe governed by the Dark Forest Law, a civilization not powerful enough to dominate the surrounding star system must strictly guard the coordinates of its home planet. If an alien civilization were to learn the coordinates of a less developed planet, it would inevitably be devastating to the less developed civilization. This is because any civilization that manages to extend its reach beyond its home planet and enter the interstellar age is invariably resource-hungry, and a planet nurturing life holds immense value. Civilizations that manage to enter the interstellar age are inherently more powerful than indigenous civilizations that cannot yet leave their home planet, even to the point of being completely disproportionately powerful, like armored troops confronting Stone Age primitives. Therefore, any intelligent civilization is apprehensive and cautious when entering the interstellar realm. When encountering an alien civilization, they will meticulously guard the coordinates of their home planet, never foolishly allowing an alien civilization to learn their home planet's coordinates unless they are certain of the outcome, thus preventing disaster for their compatriots on their home planet. Yet, now, To help America survive this crisis, the damned Negroes have voluntarily handed over Earth's coordinates to the Macru, knowing their nickname, Cosmic Locusts. The mountain where Macun is trapped is the highest on Earth, called the Himalayas, Nick Fury added darkly. This was his plan. A friend's death would be better than his own. Sacrifice Eurasia, especially the ancient nation across the ocean that had been threatening America in recent years. He had faith in SHIE's strength. The Macru wouldn't succeed easily. A mutually devastating defeat would be ideal. If the Macru prevailed, Nick Fury still had Carol as a card. Even the mighty Kree, the dominant power in the universe, had been defeated by Carol. What would a lopsided victory hold for the Macru? Even if SHIE managed a lucky victory, the nation across the ocean would undoubtedly be severely weakened, giving America the opportunity to weather the crisis and re-establish its supremacy. Furthermore, he could use the conflict to incite the Skrulls to join the war, offering the Far East as bait. He had no doubt Talos would be tempted. As for Carol, Nick Fury knew his friend well. He would certainly not intervene in a war between the great powers within Earth. At most, he would persuade her to intervene only when America's survival was at stake. Therefore, he considered Carol merely a backup against the Macru. In the war against the SWIE and the Eastern powers, he could rely on the Macru and Skrulls. Once they had weakened their opponents, America could then launch its own attack. He wouldn't be worried about failing to convince the consortium bosses back home, as Nick Fury would explain the Macru's long lifespans, powerful superpowers, and advanced alien technology they possessed. This would guarantee America's escape from Earth. Indeed, Nick Fury had changed his mind somewhat. He planned to push America into interstellar space upon his return. After eliminating potential enemies, he would lead Earth's civilization to become an interstellar civilization. After all, the American higher-ranking officials and consortium bosses were already aware of the Skrulls' existence. He could no longer conceal the existence of the Skrulls, forcing him to choose a new path. Fortunately, we can now draw upon the power of the Macru. Not only can we help America overcome this crisis, but we can also eliminate potential enemies and usher in a new and glorious future. This is called borrowing troops to suppress a bandit, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Honestly, the Bald Trader's plan has a high chance of success, thanks to the Macru's immense overall strength. A single fantastic dragon alone can wreak havoc on America, easily destroying entire city blocks when battling Iron Man. The Macru not only possesses powerful bodies but also possesses a variety of extraordinary abilities. Breathing fire and water are child's play. The Macru possess all the superpowers Nick Fury once hoped to obtain from Hydra, and they also possess a vast fleet of looted spaceships. Even with SHIE's vast resources, they are likely to fail. Clearly, he's unaware of the agency's evolution. King, the Skrull ship has suddenly departed. A 7 to 8 meter tall gray dragon entered the stone hall. What? Nick Fury looked stunned. What the heck is Talos up to? Little did he know, the Gravitco had succeeded, Taros had lost leadership, and the Skrulls were heading to Hala, attempting to negotiate with Lin Hao, using the interstellar intelligence they had accumulated in exchange for their home planet. Coincidentally, the intelligence Nick Fury had obtained about his journey to Macru 4 was also quite valuable. Lin Hao, also an Earthling, would undoubtedly be curious about another Earthling's interstellar activities. After all, how could a Skrull, who had spent 20 years on Earth, not be aware of the delicate relationship between China and the United States? Ignore them. Gather the warriors and follow me, Gu roared. He was going to Earth to bring back the Son of God and his unworthy son. Chapter 306, Fair, Fair, and Damn Fair. Grave, it's too risky for you to do this. On the Skrull spaceship, Talos' family of 3 has been controlled in a separate cabin, and the 2 cabins next door are holding Talos' close friends who support him. We have never had any contact with the Chinese. Why should they trust us? You are gambling with the future of the Skrulls by doing this. Facing Taros' clamor, Glaive sneered and asked, then why do you trust the Americans? Why do you believe that the damn niggers can help us get a habitat from the Americans? Why do you believe that the Americans will give alms? Because America is the most advanced country on Earth. They are the most qualified to represent the Earth civilization, Taros refuted loudly, and put a big hit on him. The resolution to pin hopes on the Americans is a unanimous decision of the Parliament, but now you disperse the Parliament. Do you want to be a dictator? Ha 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 ha. The most advanced country can't even build a spacecraft, Glaive sneered. A country that is less advanced than them was the first to rush out of the earth and even destroyed the overlord of the universe. I thought you were just indecisive, but I didn't expect you to be so stupid. The Skrulls were once the overlords of the universe, with a civilization of millions of years, but you have been brainwashed by a country with a history of only more than 200 years. This boy is not worthy of being consulted. Keep an eye on them. Wait until I return to my home planet and gather my displaced brethren, then reorganize the council and judge Talus for his faults, Grave ordered his Skrull guards. Grave, the Chinese are not trustworthy, Talus continued to shout. You will kill the rest of our brethren. The Skrull spacecraft headed straight for Hala, flying swiftly to contact Lin Hao as soon as possible. Lin Hao remained on Hala, and SHIE agents gradually arrived. A mere 150,000 agents could not possibly control the resources accumulated by the Kree over millions of years, so regular military personnel were also dispatched. The scene was one of fluttering red flags in a sea of people. However, it can only be understood, not described. Fortunately, the Kree civilization had been under the control of the Supreme Intelligence for so long that it had lost its independent thinking, and the entire takeover process was uneventful. With the exception of Ronan, the accuser, who challenged the Supreme Intelligence and was then dispatched by Lin Hao, the other Kree did not resist the Supreme Intelligence's orders, as they did not believe that the Great Supreme Intelligence could be controlled by humans. Since the Supreme Intelligence wants them to cooperate with Earthlings, there must be a profound reason behind it. They simply need to obey. Therefore, the Kree civilization is actually the easiest to conquer. As long as you are strong enough and can control the Supreme Intelligence, the Kree will obey, even actively imagining things. Unlike other civilizations that have always been restless, they always produce countless brave warriors in the face of invaders. As long as the people survive, they will never be defeated by any invader. Don't try to take on too much at once. I'll keep all the Kree's main spacecraft. We'll consume them first, and then migrate the population to the nearest habitable planet. From then on, it's just a matter of steady work. Lin Hao presided over a high-level meeting of the SUMAR, and gave advice to the personnel responsible for receiving the Kree. Don't worry, Director Lin. We all understand that biting off more than you can chew. The reception personnel were all beaming. A planet is a priceless treasure. The Kree have occupied tens of thousands of planets over millions of years. Be careful when selecting immigrants. In addition to focusing on their past experience, you should also pay attention to their ideological tendencies, Lin Hao continued. A blank canvas is easy to paint on. Earth is already pitch black, with the red and white mixed together and indistinguishable. Now that we have a new habitable planet, let's bring the red here first. This will facilitate establishing a fair distribution model on the new planet. Some of the receiving personnel fell silent. Lin Hao glanced at them and sneered. No one thinks the planet I conquered with so much effort is just for some family to expand its wealth, right? If you don't understand, then let me state it again. On the planet I conquered, there can only be three things: fairness, fairness, and damn fairness. If you don't agree with this, then stay on Earth. Otherwise, if you come here and try to cause trouble, don't blame me for being rude. These qualified first batch of receiving personnel to come to Yuanchu Star had witnessed Lin Hao's unstoppable power, which could destroy the world with a wave of his hand. No one was foolish enough to defy his will. Besides, it's all fair. Sharing the benefits is better than being slapped to death. The meeting made them sweat, but they were all happy when they thought that all the Kree's resources and technology would fall into their own hands. If only it were not so fair, they could get a little more. There was an observer in this meeting, and that was Thanos with purple skin. I've read all the books you asked me to read, including what your predecessors have done. I also understand it all, Thanos said with emotion. They are indeed powerful and great. Before, I have never seen people like them in the universe, not a single one. Among the civilizations I have seen, there are at most epics of lone braves. Their starting point has always been personal honor and disgrace. It's normal. This universe is not a normal universe. People like you who claim to understand most of the knowledge in the universe have never come into contact with the books I gave you. It's because some higher dimensional beings have subjectively blocked these things for you. So you would rather choose to slaughter half of all life than think of trying another way, because there is no such way in your consciousness. You're right, Thanos nodded, agreeing with Lin Hao's point of view. This road is indeed worth taking. However, just like those people just now, as long as an intelligent species has independent self-awareness, it is inevitable to have the idea of eating more and taking more. I know that before the individual's moral level reaches the level of actively maintaining a fair order, a supervision system is definitely needed. Lin Hao looked at Thanos with a smile. This time it was Thanos' turn to show the same expression as Boba, and he said with a wry smile, "This kind of thing is more difficult than killing half of all life in the universe. After all, killing half of all life only requires a snap of the fingers, but maintaining fair order requires self-discipline, withstanding the infamy and danger, and persevering. It may not be accomplished in 100 or 200 years. Yet, your civilization is dead anyway, so it doesn't matter where you stay," Lin Hao said with a grin, with the face of a landlord who had grabbed a strong farmhand. "Besides, you are very strong and have no past intersection with him, so you are most suitable for this position. Don't worry, you won't always be the good guy. This is the good thing about Director Lin. He is never stingy with his own people. You can also serve as the Director of Women's Affairs, helping them improve their education, learn self-respect and self-improvement, and strive to become friends of women in the new era. When women learn self-improvement, they begin to pursue their own values and aspire to achieve great things. This will lead to a decline in fertility rates, and they will pay more attention to the education of their offspring. While this will temporarily affect population growth, it will greatly improve the overall educational level of society. Highly educated people are more useful than illiterate people. After all, the interstellar age places higher demands on people's education." Chapter 307 Super Skrull. While the SUMA was busy taking over Kree territory, a Skrull ship finally arrived in the system containing the planet Hala. Upon entering the system, it was locked onto Kree interstellar radar. "Please inform the respected Mr. Lin Hao that the Skrulls are willing to exchange the resource planet distribution intelligence and technological accumulation accumulated over millions of years for our home planet." Glaive, dressed in formal Skrull attire, appeared before the camera, his demeanor humble and his expression sincere. The message was immediately relayed to the Supreme Intelligence, who then passed it on to Lin Hao. Lin Hao pondered for a moment, then waved his hand. "Let them in." Glaive was overjoyed to learn that Lin Hao was willing to meet them immediately. Ever since the Skrulls suffered a setback in the war with the Kree, their once controlled subordinate civilizations and allies had abandoned them. As the war intensified, the fleeing Skrulls sought refuge from numerous allies, but most rejected them. Some even turned to the Kree, informing them of their presence and offering their heads for bounties. Grave had long since witnessed the fickleness of life and the fragility of human nature. He had prepared to wait outside Hara for 10 days or even half a month, but he hadn't expected the powerful Lin Hao to meet them immediately. This gave him confidence in his plan. The Skrulls these days simply wanted to return to their home planet and start over. It was better than wandering, displaced, and dependent on others. Grave arrived at the gates of a manor on the outskirts of the Kree capital. Not long ago, this place was a picturesque green mountain, but now it has been designated a forbidden area by the Supreme Intelligence. A large number of construction robots have built an Oriental-style manor here. The front yard serves as an office space, solemn and formal, while the backyard is a relaxing and beautiful place. After the SHIE agent checked Grave's identity, he led him into the manor. Lin Hao met Grave in the living room. After waiting for a while, Grave saw Lin Hao enter and quickly stood up. He imitated Chinese etiquette and stepped forward to greet Mr. Lin. He spoke in clear, fluent Chinese. "I'm Grave the Skrull. Greetings, Mr. Lin. Your Chinese is quite good. From whom did you learn it?" Lin Hao glanced at him and sat down. No. Grave was shocked, hunching even lower. He quickly waved his hands and began to explain. "I learned it on my own. I'm a pretty good learner." Lin Hao stared at him. The soul-capturing technique he had learned from the 9-yin manual, after his magical modification, was now comparable to psychic superpowers. "I've only been to Mao, not China," Grave confessed blankly. Having obtained this crucial information, Lin Hao lost interest in prying into his private lives and ended his control. Grave, regaining consciousness, was horrified but didn't dare to get angry. A look of fear filled his face. "I agree to your request." Lin Hao's confession revealed Grave's purpose. "Really?" Grave was instantly overjoyed, his previous fear and slight resentment forgotten, his eyes filled with uncontrollable excitement. "Your home world is important to the Skrulls, but it's insignificant to me." Lin Hao stood up, walked over, and grabbed Grave's arm. The next second, they appeared on the Skrull ship. The sudden appearance of the two startled the Skrulls aboard, and Grave shouted, "Mr. Lin Hao has agreed to deal with us. We can return to our homeworld. Glavy, the man who had rallied a group of opponents and pushed for a secret invasion of Earth, was a master at seizing opportunities to show off. Hearing this, the other Skrulls were overjoyed, looking at Lin Hao with no more fear, only gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Lin, you're truly a kind man. We really don't know how to thank you enough. They had wandered Earth for 20 years, trapped inside the cramped ship by Talus's relentless refusal to allow them to infiltrate. After 20 years, they hadn't arrived at the Earth harbor that Talus had promised them, and now Glaive had only paid a single visit before returning to their homeworld. The difference between them was immediately apparent. The Skrulls, once forced to agree to Glaive's coup, now fully supported him as leader. Alright, take me to see Talus, who's under your control. Lin Hao casually dismissed the Kree's congratulations. As he'd said, the Kree homeworld was of little importance to him. He wanted Talus's daughter more. It wasn't because she would grow up to become Dragon Queen, possessing the power to transform into any beautiful woman, not really. Rather, it was because Talus' daughter was the legendary Super Skrull. In Marvel's 2023 series Secret Invasion, Gaia, Talus' daughter, played by Dragon Queen, possessed a power coveted by the Skrulls. Not only could she copy memories and transform into her target through contact, but she could also replicate their superpowers. With a simple touch, she could replicate all of their superpowers, even knowledge-based magic. And there was no limit to the amount of superpowers she could copy as many as she wanted and use them immediately. A girl who had never exercised, just by touching Marvel Carol, instantly glowed and mastered her superpowers. This was a common theme in Secret Invasion. Other people's superpowers were acquired through a lot of hardship and even suffering, but this Super Skrull only needed a touch. Lin Hao didn't care how far-fetched Marvel's concept was. He was more interested in studying the limits of the Super Skrull's abilities and whether they could replicate abilities acquired from other worlds. Seeing Lin Hao's inquiry, Grave realized that he might be interested in Talus and worried that he might be interested in Talus. But he had no choice but to immediately fulfill Lin Hao's request. Come with me. Arriving at Talus's cell, Lin Hao passed by the two adults and set his sights on the teenage girl, but frowned. She's not a little girl. Lin Hao immediately recognized her true age. Skrulls can genetically alter bodies, but they cannot touch souls or consciousness. With a casual flick of his finger, a beam of white light shot out, striking the little girl. A tall shadowy figure emerged from his body. This was one of the uses of the Liu Jia Kimen technique, a technique known as the Dunjia technique, capable of commanding spirits and exorcising demons. Seeing the shadowy figure's face, Grave, standing beside Lin Hao, was horrified. Brooke, how did you get on the ship? Weren't you in another settlement? The Skrull named Brooke sneered at Grave. I already took Gaia's place aboard the ship. You, traitor to the Skrulls, will never find Gaia. She's just a child, innocent. But do you know that your so-called child is actually the hope of saving the Skrull's fate? Lin Hao casually said. She's the legendary Super Skrull from your Skrull history. Director Lin was always so merciless and heartbreaking. Honestly, the Super Skrull concept was clearly a Marvel reference to the Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball. Even the Macro people's ability to grant wishes was copied from Shenron. Of course, how can something like that be considered plagiarism? It's a mutual tribute. Chapter 308 You contribute, I enjoy, this is American freedom. What? Lin Hao's words shocked all the surrounding Skrulls. Clearly, these Skrulls had heard of the legend of the Super Skrull, a cultural legacy often mentioned by teachers and parents. Mr. Lin, are you telling the truth? Glaive pressed eagerly. Is Talus's daughter, Gaia, truly a Super Skrull? He didn't care where Lin Hao had heard the rumors of the Super Skrull. After all, he was a powerful being, having just annihilated the Kree civilization. Perhaps he had received the news from the Supreme Intelligence. Two civilizations, antagonistic for millions of years, had long since developed a deep understanding of each other. How could a cultural heritage passed down through countless generations possibly remain a secret? Glaive was only concerned with whether Talus's daughter was a Super Skrull. 20 years ago, the Skrull homeworld had been captured by the Kree, and the people had fled. Even if they were to regain their homeworld from Lin Hao now, the weakened Skrulls would need strength to defend their homeland in the future. The Super Skrull was their hope to protect their homeland and their civilization. See for yourself if it's true. Lin Hao simulated a Yamanaka family ninjutsu, directly extracting Taro's memories and displaying a video. The footage depicted a time 10 years ago, when Taros was playing with his daughter and discovered she could mimic his baseball skills. This marked the beginning of a verification process. After several attempts, Taros finally confirmed that his daughter was the Super Skrull, a name his clan had long cherished. Gia is still a child. We can't let her bear the pressure of an entire civilization. She should have the freedom to choose her own life. In the video, Taros shared his daughter's secret with his wife. As she hesitated to confess to the clan, Taros uttered these words. The other Skrulls present were stunned for a moment. Lin Hao retracted his technique, a hint of sneer on his lips. Sure enough, the next second, Grave immediately dismantled the energy shield in front of the cabin and strode inside. He grabbed Taros's collar with both hands and roared angrily. Your daughter is free to choose her life, but what about us? What about those tribesmen who died defending their homeland? They all deserve to die, right? No, Talus retorted subconsciously. Gia, she is still a child, I'm Chunimity. Grave punched Talus in the cheek heavily. If she were just an ordinary child, as adults, we can indeed give her the opportunity to choose freely. But she is the legendary Super Skrull. If it were peacetime, no matter what talents the child has, it is indeed her own right to decide how to plan her life, but we are in a state of civilizational extinction. Our home planet has been occupied, and our people are fleeing everywhere. Our civilization is about to completely disappear, but you deliberately hid the only hope that can save the Skrull civilization. She is a child. Aren't the young people who have been hunted down by the Kree in the past 10 years children? In these turbulent times, the ancestors of the Skrulls passed on great power to your daughter. Shouldn't she stand up and contribute to the survival of civilization? She can obviously become a hero who leads the Skrulls back to their home planet. If the Skrull civilization is completely destroyed and she is the only one left, what's the point of being able to choose her life freely? Or have you educated her into an idiot who would rather watch her compatriots being slaughtered and civilization destroyed than pursue ridiculous freedom? Grave felt quite hopeless. Talus had clearly discovered his daughter's special abilities 10 years ago, and they could have begun organizing a counterattack 10 years ago. A lean camel is bigger than a horse. Although the Skrulls were defeated by the Kree, they still had some savings, which could easily be used to find powerful individuals whose abilities could be replicated for the Super Skrulls. The replication process is simple, requiring no digestion time, and the abilities can be continuously stacked, eliminating the risk of their abilities going out of control. Thus, Talus's daughter, Gaia, would sooner or later grow to the point where she could single-handedly defeat armies and destroy planets. In fact, simply touching Big Mom Marvel could grant such powers, and Talus, who already knew Nick Fury and Carol, had ample opportunities to let his daughter do so. However, after discovering his daughter's special abilities, Talus never allowed his daughter and Carol any close contact, even though Carol had held his daughter in her arms when they first met. Indeed, to give his daughter the opportunity to freely choose her own life, Talus voluntarily forgoes Carol's superpowers. And even after witnessing Carol single-handedly destroy Ronin's warship and knowing they were headed for Hala to destroy the Supreme Intelligence, he still chose to give up. No. I remember Carol holding Gaia once, Grave suddenly recalled, staring at Talus again. Then, with a sudden realization, he let out a mournful laugh. Ho ha ho ha, you actually gave up, ha ho ha ho ha. So in your eyes, the future of the Skrulls, the lives of countless people, are less important than your daughter's right to choose? I actually supported you as leader back then. I'm the Skrull sinner, Grave roared, his emotions breaking down. Suddenly, his hand transformed into a sharp claw and stabbed himself in the jaw. Grave, the tribesmen around him were horrified. Lin Hao pointed a finger at him, and Grave was frozen in place. Tisk tisk tisk, Lin Hao looked at Talus with an expressionless face and said sarcastically, see? He is more responsible and more like a leader than you. After mocking him, Lin Hao looked around at the Skrulls with grim faces and said loudly, do you know why he made such a choice? The Skrulls around him turned their eyes, and even Grave, who was frozen in place, stretched his ears to listen to Lin Hao's opinion. Because he has been brainwashed by American thinking, the magical Americans advocate that everyone should have the opportunity to freely choose their own lives. But many people ignore that this freedom is limited to the social elite. America uses this trick to fool the elites on the earth, attracting them to immigrate to America, so as to obtain funds and talents. Because freedom is always more refreshing than restraint and responsibility, the propaganda attracted many people who wanted to vent their desires freely to go to America, making this country glorious for a time, but this glory is just a castle built on the beach. When the waves come, it will be destroyed immediately. After all, people immigrate to America to enjoy the good life, not to share the country's hardships. The most interesting thing is that once this country encounters war, they will encourage the lower class to contribute, offering war allowances that are much higher than normal occupations, tricking foolish young people from the lower class into the battlefield, and when they die or are disabled, the promised allowances will disappear without a trace. If you want to ask for it, the elite eagles will drive a tank over the veterans. He turned and continued to look at Talus with a hint of pity. I really don't know if you've been influenced by copying too many American memories, or if you've truly been brainwashed by their propaganda. Your stance is clearly not with the Skrulls. You've completely considered yourself an American elite, and your mindset is identical to theirs. When dedication is needed, let others do it. Don't bother me and my family. When success comes, you, the elegant gentleman, can step forward and enjoy the fruits of your labor. How interesting. Talus, a Skrull, was much like Thor, another Asgardian. He preferred to trust the Americans and live under their roof, rather than lead his people to search for or seize a new habitable planet in the universe. Tisk tisk, the stars are paying homage to America. America is truly magnificent. Chapter 309. Amazed, why have disasters occurred so frequently in the United States since 2008? Earth, over America. While Lin Hao was busy taking over the Kree territory and Nick Fury was searching the universe for foreign aid, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, had returned to Earth after a long absence. On the surface, not much had changed. Aside from the devastated Houston, the sudden disappearance of Washington, half of Tokyo, the eruption of Mount Fuji, and the disappearance of the mold base in the Ryukyu Islands, not much had changed. Director Lin's serious face JPG Carol looked at the global map scanned by the spacecraft. China was completely blank, indicating it could not be scanned, while America was filled with ruins. She was silent for a long time. What on earth has happened? She hadn't been back for more than a decade, so how could everything and everyone have changed? Thinking of the changed people, she immediately contacted her longtime friend Maria Rambo, who happened to be not human. Hello, this is the Rambo residence. Maria Rambo's daughter, Monica Rambo, answered the phone. You are? Carol flashed a hint of surprise at the familiar voice. Are you Monica? Excuse me, who are you? Monica was puzzled when a knock sounded at the door. Confused, she put down the phone and walked over to open it. Aunt Carol. She recognized Carol, looking almost unchanged, as the aunt she'd been thinking about. Hi, Monica, long time no see. Carol waved, a little awkwardly. She finally remembered the promise she'd made over a decade ago. Back then, Monica was only 11, but now she was nearly 30, a mature woman. Altered by Kree technology, she had a long lifespan, and a dozen or 20 years seemed like a fleeting moment to her. However, she overlooked the fact that Earthlings have a short lifespan. A single separation, and the next meeting, a separation, would be her lifespan forever. She wasn't supposed to return to Earth until 2018, but by then, Thanos had snapped his fingers, erasing Monica. Her friend, Maria Rambo, was aging, hospitalized for illness, and overwhelmed by the disappearance of her daughter. She died. After years away, her face remained unchanged, but all her old friends were gone. Monica, who's here? A weak voice rang out from the upstairs room. Mom, it's Carol, Monica shouted excitedly. Aunt Carol. Her mother had been ill for years, and Aunt Carol's return today might lift her spirits. She couldn't expect to recover, because her mother had cancer. Hearing her friend's feeble voice, Carol rushed over to Maria's bedroom and saw a black woman, her hair completely bald, lying on the bed. She was emaciated, her face gaunt. What's going on? Carol stared at her friend in disbelief. It's nothing, just an illness. Maria, overjoyed to see her friend back, struggled to sit up. Mom has cancer, just diagnosed 2 years ago? Monica poured Carol a glass of water and asked with anticipation, Aunt Carol, are you back from space? Although Thor had caused trouble in the White House, the United States had kept it a secret to save face. As for the Skrulls, the world's top leaders would keep it a secret to avoid causing panic. Many Earthlings only learned about the existence of aliens and extraterrestrial civilizations through official channels when the SHIA launched a spacecraft a while ago. This is because American-led forces have been hyping up the possibility that SHIA's explorations might lead to alien invasions of Earth, promoting a threat theory and publicly releasing numerous pieces of evidence to reinforce their claims. Unbeknownst to them, The real threat has been brought back by Nick Fury himself. Blaming others for evil deeds they've already committed countless times is very American. The Rambo family, however, is different. They've already seen aliens and even battled them. So, Monica Rambeau asked Carol with anticipation, alien technology should be more advanced than Earth's, right? So, do they have a cure for cancer? Hearing her daughter's words, Maria, leaning back in bed, cast a hopeful glance at her friend. After all, even ants crave life. That, Carol said with a wry smile, shaking her head. No, alien technology can't cure cancer either. What? Monica said in disbelief. Did the Kree and Skrulls boast a million-year battle for supremacy? And they couldn't conquer cancer cells in a million years? They can give people superpowers, that, Carol said, looking embarrassed. I don't know. Her hopes shattered, and Monica felt as if her energy had been drained. Maria, seemingly accustomed to disappointment, forced a smile. Monica, go get Aunt Carol some food. I'll have a chat with her. As an African-American woman who rose through the ranks to colonel in the U.S. Air Force, and as the woman who founded SWORD and some universes, Maria was no stranger to reading people's expressions. She could tell Carol's sudden return today was clearly up to something. After sending her daughter away, Maria smiled and asked her friend, "Why did you suddenly come back? What happened on Earth during my absence?" Carol asked directly, "Why did Washington suddenly disappear? And Houston is in ruins. I knew if you came back one day, you'd definitely be interested in these things," Maria said, pointing to the laptop on the desk. "I've saved the records for you. It's all in there." Carol hurried over, pulled out a chair, turned on the laptop, and began browsing. From the sudden battle between the Black Panthers and the White Drugs in San Francisco, to the battle between Eunuch Xi and Eunuch Tai atop the White House, followed by the aliens falling from the sky and crashing into the White House, the magic school in England, the black skeletons in Houston, the spectacular scene in Washington, and finally the Tokyo incident and the independence of the Ryukyu Islands, it could be said that Maria had collected and documented every major event Lin Hao had undertaken over the past 2 years, with the exception of the more obscure incidents that had not been made public. After reading it, Carol keenly realized something. Why did it start in April 2008? Because before the Black versus White War in San Francisco, America had been peaceful. Even if unusual incidents occurred, SHIELD was able to quickly resolve them, Maria replied, forcing herself to stay awake. That's strange. Carol, whose intelligence had been significantly enhanced by Kree transformation, quickly realized the unusual nature of this intelligence. There's no reason why disasters would suddenly increase in America starting 2.5 years ago. Could it be that Americans have offended a deity with the power of curses? Maria asked in astonishment. Are there really such deities? Her friend's question deflected Carol. She had initially intended to suspect human intervention, because she knew such deities existed. I'm out for a social event tonight and will be back late. I'll finish writing today's story so you can read it tomorrow. The following is a major plot point, a connecting scene between the previous and the next. America, Civil War. Chapter 310. America needs a superhero team. Carol's suspicions had initially focused on humans, but her friend Maria's interruption sparked her suspicions about a demon possessing strange powers. After all, the octopus monster that descended from the sky to destroy Washington looked very similar to the beholder Sumagrath, a figure recorded in many civilizations. If it were truly the work of a demon, then America must have done something to anger a certain dimensional demon. Hearing Carol's reasoning, Maria said, if Nick Fury is still around, he should know something about these events. Nick isn't on Earth. Carol turned from her chair to look at Maria in bed. I'm not sure if he's still on Earth, but I heard that high-ranking government officials are very dissatisfied with him. SHIELD has been disbanded, and now it's SWORD, a 5-nation organization that handles global paranormal events. Maria had spent many years in the Air Force, rising through the ranks to the rank of colonel. She even spearheaded the formation of SWORD and some universes, clearly possessing connections. If it weren't for her Marvel Universe's most incurable disease, her dual strengths of being African American and a woman would surely have her in the running for general, perhaps even a presidential candidate in the future. Hearing this, Carol paused for a moment, her brow furrowed. It must be that his aid to the Skrulls has been discovered. She didn't think Nick Fury had done anything wrong. After all, it was a gesture of kindness, a demonstration of American tolerance. But those damned politicians couldn't understand. If that's the case, He likely followed the Skrulls into outer space. I didn't conceal my ship when I entered the solar system. If the Skrulls were still around, they'd surely know I was back. No concealment, Maria immediately reminded him. Then you've likely been discovered by SHIEA. They now possess the technology to build spacecraft and can conduct long-distance space travel. By the way, what exactly is this SHIEA? Carol had just discovered this unfamiliar organization while looking through her information. Why do they possess spacecraft manufacturing technology? SHIELD is a Chinese established organization similar to SHIELD. They've always kept a low profile, until the Tokyo incident, when they suddenly flexed their muscles. They possessed a massive air fortress, numerous agents with extraordinary abilities, and later launched spacecraft. Maria shared the intelligence she'd gathered with her friend through her network. Analysis suggests their spacecraft manufacturing technology may have been acquired from aliens, which is a major source of the high-ranking officials' dislike for Nick. Currently, the top government officials are wary of SHIE in China, but neither side has plans for war. SHIE is clearly focused on space exploration. As the saying goes, even in humble positions, one must not forget the concerns of their country. Despite her serious illness, Maria remained concerned about America and never forgot her status as an elite eagle. Honestly, these farm tools, finally accepted by the farmers, showed a love for America far greater than that of the farmers themselves and the subsequent immigrant elites. They had actually come to regard America as their homeland. Come to think of it, if they didn't consider advanced America their homeland, would they return to Africa and become pathetic savages? That's good. Space exploration isn't that easy, Maria said thankfully. SHIE will expend countless resources and manpower over the next few decades, even centuries. I believe America will catch up sooner or later during this time. Carol was stunned, then smiled bitterly and shook her head. I'm afraid we don't stand a chance. Maria frowned and looked at her friend, asking, what's wrong? Carol opened the personal terminal on her wrist and played a video that had dominated Starlink's search volume for months and was unlikely to fade in popularity. It was the footage of Lin Hao destroying the Kree army with a single wave of his hand. This man is clearly a Chinese from Earth. His appearance in space coincided with the time frame of SHIE's spacecraft launch. If he's not an Earthling stranded years ago, then China must be taking over Kree territory now. Silence. Silence was Nico tonight. Maria was stunned, her eyes wide open, her throat hoarse, and she hesitated on a syllable, unable to utter it. Why? Why was this Chinese man so powerful? Why wasn't such a powerful figure born in America? Carol was already the most powerful transcendent Maria knew, capable of single-handedly defeating armies and destroying nations. She could even enter an extinguished sun, reignite it, and escape unscathed, possessing the power to single-handedly destroy a planet. But are you confident you can defeat this Chinese? Maria was no ordinary American woman. She was an elite eagle concerned for her nation's safety. Her immediate thought was, America must have the power to respond. Silence, the whiteness of the night. Carol remained silent for a long time, unable to nod, forcing herself to maintain a facade. Perhaps I can contain him, Maria understood, and after a moment's contemplation, she immediately said, we must immediately inform the higher-ups of this information so they can prepare. This was the thinking of an American soldier. But Carol was no longer a soldier, she was now a superhero, a space policeman. Vigilancers hated government interference, whether it was from an alien planet or Earth itself. Prepare for what? Carol laughed. Can America's military strength rival that of the Kree, the dominant power in the universe? Even without this powerful Chinese leader taking action, SHIE could simply send back a few Kree ships and dominate the world. Telling this to the top government officials will only lead to fear and unrest. Who knows what those politicians will do? We can't just do nothing, can we? Maria frantically cried, suddenly coughing violently. Carol stepped forward, patted her friend's back, and reassured her, SHIE has already taken over the Kree's territory. They probably wouldn't value Earth's limited resources. War is unlikely to break out, so, what America needs isn't a massive but useless army. What it needs is an elite team of superheroes, similar to the Kree's Team Marvel. Her thoughts coincided with Nick Fury's, who had actually begun forming the Avengers before being suddenly stabbed in the back by Lin Hao and stripped of his power. This wasn't just their opinion, it was the established rule of the entire Marvel universe: no army, just various superhero teams. Superheroes are the core storyline of the Marvel universe. No matter what kind of crisis arises, the military can stand aside and the people can just wait for the superheroes to arrive. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311, Amazing Ant in Action. After conversing with Maria, Carol got busy. After all, she still remembered her American identity. Seeing her homeland in turmoil and its status as a world leader fading, she decided to stay in America for the long term, helping her country through its crisis before returning to outer space to serve as a space policeman. After all, she had a long life ahead of her. She had no intention of sharing Lin Hao's intelligence with American officials, nor did she consider sharing her spaceship manufacturing technology with them. Spaceship manufacturing technology is a treasure that would make major powers scramble for it on Earth, but not in outer space. The cosmic black market even offers actual spaceships and blueprints from major civilizations. With Carol's abilities, even without stealing or robbing, she could easily eliminate a few pirate gangs and raise enough money to buy these things and send them back to Earth. But she didn't. There was no need. Even if America acquired these things and spent years building its own spaceships, what would the point be? Others could destroy a vast swath of them with a wave of their hands. It's better to just stick to forming a superhero team. As long as China doesn't start a war, the superhero team she leads is more than enough to handle the crisis facing America. See, isn't Big Mama Marvel so considerate? To form a superhero team, you first need to find superheroes to recruit. Carol, having been away from Earth for years, doesn't have much knowledge of the local superheroes. Maria's connections have always been in the military, so she's equally clueless. She only knows Iron Man's location, even the Red Swordsman has vanished without a trace. Carol quickly thinks of someone, Phil Coulson, Nick Fury's former henchman. When the World Security Council sent the five-nation joint investigation team to investigate SHIELD, Phil Coulson had also earned the dislike of American High Command for helping Nick Fury conceal the existence of the Skrulls. Other SHIELD agents who don't wish to join the newly established SWORD can transfer to other agencies like the CIA, the FIRD, and the NSA. After all, these were talented agents who had been paid for years to be recruited. Wouldn't it be a waste of time to see them become unemployed and destabilizing civilians? Coulson, however, didn't enjoy this privilege. He was stripped of all his duties and even sentenced to 6 months in prison. If it weren't for his numerous contributions and the fact that he likely possessed secret intelligence, the powerful would have been wary of him. To appease him, they only gave him a minor punishment. After his release, Coulson used his savings to open a burger stand outside Stark Tower in New York City. With the help of Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, and with his employees constantly patronizing the business, his income surpassed even the official salary at SWIEA. But Coulson was also a patriot who, even in his humble position, steadfastly guarded his country. He had been waiting for an opportunity, a chance to serve his country once again. Today, that opportunity presented itself. Carol appeared at his burger stand early in the morning. "Mom, what would you like to order?" Coulson, in his uniform, looked up and began to introduce. "We have steak burgers and hot dogs for breakfast." After a moment's pause, Coulson finally recognized a person. "Ms. Carol, I just skipped breakfast. Give me one of your best-selling burgers." Carol found a seat and sat down. Coulson quickly prepared the meal for his acquaintance and brought it over. He didn't expect this incredibly powerful superhuman to just stop by for a burger for no reason. After she finished her burger, Coulson asked, "Ms. Carol, why are you here today?" "I want to form a team, a superhero team," Carol said bluntly. "I'd like you to join me and help find new companions and recruit them." "Great," Coulson beamed, pumping his fist excitedly. "I've been waiting for this day." It was already difficult for him to get into government service through the exams. If he wanted to serve his country, he would have to find a lesser-known path. He didn't care about position or power, he just wanted to serve America. "Wait a moment," Coulson immediately ran to the upstairs lounge, returning with a pile of handwritten documents. "These are all things I wrote down from memory. Electronic copies are unacceptable. SWORD and SWORD already possess artificial intelligence. Furthermore, I suspect Hydra hasn't been completely eliminated, he excitedly explained the organization to Carol, as if he had rediscovered it. Carol was primarily concerned with the number of transcendents within the United States. As for the so-called Hydra, she paid no attention. Such a small organization, operating from the depths of a planet, was no match for a group of interstellar pirates. It would be a matter of a single blow or two. Captain America, Iron Man, the Red Swordsman, and the Swordsman Brigade? Carol wondered. What is this Swordsman Brigade? Why are you labeling it unpredictable? This is probably the largest group of supernatural beings in America, and perhaps even the world, Callison added with a hint of embarrassment, smiling. Except for SHIELD, they must have better techniques. Techniques? Carol pressed. Are you saying these supernatural swordsmen acquired their powers through learning? Yes, Callison nodded calmly. Back then, SHIELD also formed a swordsman brigade, led by me personally. Have you learned them? Carol was eager to try. Show me. If America truly had a large number of supernatural swordsmen, then her superhero team could expand, greatly helping to deal with the current crisis. Oh, Callison said with a wry smile, shaking his head. I haven't learned them. Why? Carol was puzzled. There are actually people who don't want to possess supernatural powers? Because to learn the Evil-Repelling Sword technique, you must first remove the symbol of manliness, Callison replied honestly. Aunt Marvel, who had been 20 years ago, understood immediately. She subconsciously glanced at Callison's lower body before looking away. Well, our team can also recruit some powerful swordsmen. I won't discriminate against them. They then went on to count the superhumans available for recruitment within the United States, discovering that most of the Lone Rangers who had been exposed so far were unrecruitable due to their vendetta against America. I know this guy. He's the Prince of Asgard, Thor. How come there's another Captain America? Carol pointed at a photo Callison had clipped from a newspaper. It was a news report from after the Houston incident, when American officials launched a media frenzy, shifting the blame onto the real Captain America and Thor. Based on what we've learned so far, this guy is likely from another parallel universe. The Captain America of that universe, Callison replied. Parallel universe? Carol was stunned at first, then overjoyed. Great. If we can find a way to open a parallel universe, the superheroes there can come and help. She and Nick Fury certainly had many similar ideas, no wonder they were so close. But his whereabouts are hard to determine. Callison was speaking when the TV on the wall suddenly started broadcasting an urgent news. Dear viewers, another incident of a superhuman slaughtering a well-known businessman occurred in Phoenix, the capital of Arizona. Callison raised his head and sighed softly. Here we go again. Go to sleep. I will fall asleep at work again tomorrow. Chapter 312. The gentry's money was returned in full, and the people's money was divided into 30% and 70%. Again, Carol was puzzled. She turned to glance at the news footage, where a television station's helicopter was filming overhead, a manor below billowing with smoke. The sprawling estate boasted a complete range of amenities, including a swimming pool, gardens, and a court. A helipad and a tree-lined winding road nestled on the hilly northwest corner of the estate were Alice, now engulfed in flames. The flames in the news footage were clearly unusual. A normal building fire wouldn't have the intensity of such a sea of blaze. This is the 10th case reported in the news. The victims are all prominent businessmen, congressmen, generals, and even Hollywood stars. Phil Callison gave a helpless smile. I really can't understand. Why kill celebrities? Simply to cause panic. Who are the murderers? Transcendents, Carol immediately realized. Could it be that a sinister group of transcendents has emerged in America, specifically targeting the upper class? That's probably the case. Similar assassinations have occurred frequently in recent months. State governments have deployed large numbers of military and police to maintain order in major cities, and swordsman brigades from various departments are constantly protecting politicians. It seems to be completely ineffective now, Callison continued with a wry smile. Several major domestic security companies are even openly recruiting transcendents, offering high commissions. The world had finally gone mad, becoming something unfamiliar to him. They might not have gone far. I'll go check. You continue to organize the information. Carol quickly downed her Coke, rushed out of the store, and soared into the sky in a flash of light. For her, who could travel at the speed of light, this distance on Earth was barely enough for an after-dinner stroll. Although Director Lin is temporarily away from Earth, The plans he left behind are still influencing the situation there, primarily impacting America. Just as Maria Rambo had predicted last night, SHIE's interstellar radar has detected Carol's ship, brazenly appearing in the solar system. Zheng Xian directly contacted Lin Hao on the planet Hala via the quantum communication network. A ship has landed in America. It must be Carol Danvers. She's back, I guess she's back too, Lin Hao joked. Don't panic. I can teleport now, it's just right. I got something useful again. I'll give her a great gift. Seeing Lin Hao's familiar smile, Zheng Xian shook his head and observed a second of silence for the American people. Phoenix, the capital of Arizona, is home to one of the largest Indian reservations in the United States, home to the renowned Navajo tribe. Yes, the former masters of the North American continent have now become an endangered species, like the giant panda, in need of protection. The United States has even set up a special government agency to manage them. All matters concerning Native Americans fall under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, a division of the Department of the Interior. This agency has the power to oversee and manage Indian reservations, develop and manage infrastructure, and provide educational services for Native American students. American governance practices are still the same as those of European colonists centuries ago, supporting the upper class, fragmenting and disintegrating, and governing indirectly through compradors and agents. They often grant money and privileges to Native American leaders, who continue to this day, such as cars, houses, and banknotes, as well as positions in state legislatures and foundations, and allow their children to attend prestigious schools. Numerous Native American protection societies exist across the United States. These organizations, operating as foundations, purportedly protect Native Americans to amass wealth, evade taxes, and even launder funds. As is well known, American law provides for a myriad of taxes, and the Internal Revenue Service, known as the nation's third military organization, possesses a formidable military presence to ensure that those who owe them pay their dues. But America is the land of capitalists. If they're treated like the poor, how can their sense of superiority be justified? Without this sense of superiority, how can they attract the influx of wealthy capitalists from around the world? Consequently, America has created loopholes for capitalists, including the establishment of charitable foundations. These foundations can be used to avoid taxes. By donating a certain percentage of their total assets to charity each year, they can legally own their wealth. You see, American capitalists are kind-hearted and cannot bear to see the suffering of the poor. Therefore, they are particularly enthusiastic about philanthropy, striving to be successful businessmen with a socially responsible mindset. As for the remaining funds after charitable giving, they can be invested. After all, to continue philanthropy, they must generate income, allowing their philanthropic efforts to benefit even more people. The profits from these investments are supposed to be used for charitable purposes. How can the IRS have the nerve to collect taxes? But does all this money actually go to charity? If you think so, you're naive. The most common and sophisticated tactic used by charitable foundations is to scam ordinary donors. They establish a company, say, Company A, and after a few years of operation, its valuation is claimed to be 1 billion yuan. Then, a foreign multinational, Company B, acquires all of Company A's operations for $1 billion. After a period of further operation, Company B sells it to Company C for $1.3 billion. Company C then rebrands and takes Company A, the previously preserved shell, public. Finally, the foundation buys out all the shares in the new company, which, after a few years of operation, successfully goes bankrupt. Everyone is happy, or, rather, regrettable, leaving behind heartaches. The foundation's directors, Company B, and Company C each receive their share, leaving only the charitable foundation without any profit. Doesn't this sound like the wise saying of a lawyer? It's a modern version of returning the gentry's money in full, and dividing the common people's money 70%. Furthermore, foundation directors can use the foundation's funds to expand their personal networks. If they need to establish good relations with a certain faction, they can hire key individuals or their connections to serve as foundation consultants, charging them hefty consulting fees. These expenses for managing various factions can be charged through the foundation's accounts and carried out under the guise of charitable procurement, without having to spend their own money and without fear of scrutiny. Is it wrong for a gentleman to invite a few gentry and celebrities to help with charitable work and work for a charity? As for arranging for their children to work at a charitable foundation for high salaries, using the charitable foundation to help them improve their resumes and apply for prestigious schools, these practices are even more trivial. We are cultivating a next generation passionate about philanthropy. We are passing on the spirit of good people and good deeds. Chapter 313, The Ghosts of the Dead Indians are about to return to the North American continent. Phoenix boasts numerous boarding schools exclusively for Native American children, funded by the Native American Protection Association. Doesn't this sound benevolent? However, it's essentially a political operation. Under the guise of protecting Native Americans and promoting literacy for the next generation, the Native American Protection Association removes children from their parents, forcibly altering their culture, erasing their traditions, and erasing any traces of Native American culture. But is it truly possible for these children to assimilate into American society when they grow up? Aside from a few tribal chiefs and families who have been co-opted and corrupted to serve as role models, the vast majority of ordinary Native American children are neither accepted by American society nor able to return to their own civilization. They are like uninhabited beings wandering on the fringes of civilization. Given the burden of cultural brainwashing, how can they offer gentle, loving education? These exclusive schools have directly contributed to the deaths of tens of thousands of Native American children, and the indirect toll is likely even greater, yet no one keeps count. Because American society doesn't care. Every American who has studied history knows exactly how their land came to be. Most Native American children in Arizona are forced to attend such schools to receive an education in American ideology. There's no way to avoid it, as their chiefs have long since rebelled. The Native American Protection Association provides substantial funding and public support for these boarding schools, which is the true reason for their continued existence. They fulfill this crucial political mission for the American government. Otherwise, if they truly intend to protect the rights of Native Americans, they will suffer the same fate as the Black Panther Party leader. Today, the estate that broke the news happens to be not far from a closed boarding school for Indian children. Alakam is a student at this school. He belongs to the renowned Comanche tribe, once the most powerful Indian tribe in North America, a nomadic people who once roamed the Estacado Plains. Just as the powerful nomadic peoples of East Asia have repeatedly destroyed brilliant civilizations, these fierce and ferocious nomadic Indian tribes once inflicted heavy casualties on the American army. Armed with black powder-powered guns, cannons, and even machine guns, these armies still suffered bitterly against the spears and bows of the Comanche warriors. However, it all ended with a 4-year war that began on October 3, 1868. Soldiers from the 4th Cavalry and the 11th Infantry, led by William Tecumseh Sherman's favorite general, Colonel Leonard Slidell Mackenzie, nicknamed Fingerless, launched the final devastation of Comancheria, a land that once controlled most of 5 states and encompassed 250,000 square miles. Round them up. Cut off their food supply. Starve them to death. Drive them into the Grand Canyon. Or simply kill them. With such cries, the Comanche, who once dominated the southwestern North American continent, were decimated to a smattering of members. Ultimately, Quanah Parker, the last chief, signed a so-called peace treaty with the Comanche, marrying a white woman and promising to pass the chieftainship to his mixed-race descendants. This brutal war, which had lasted 4 years, finally came to an end, marking the official end of the 250-year bloody conflict between Native Americans and European colonists. Incidentally, 2 of the names are quite interesting. Comanche comes from the Spanish transliteration of the Utah word comets, meaning enemy or one who has sworn enemies. Quanah Parker, a transliteration of Quanah from the Comanche word guana, meaning smell, taste, is often a feminine name. It began with sworn enemies and ended with a feminine chief selling out his tribe for personal gain. Nothing escaped the laws of history. Ericum was not the chief's son, and a chief's son would not attend such a clearly problematic boarding school. He was just an ordinary Comanche descendant with a commonplace name. Ericum means son of the eagle in Indian. Similar to the Chinese words and, these are names that carry parents' beautiful hopes, yet are often repeated. That day, as usual, Ericum carefully avoided the attention of the rude janitors and took advantage of his lunch break to get some fresh air on the roof of the teaching building. During this time, the janitors, who only came to collect their pay, didn't care what the students were doing, as long as they didn't cause trouble or disturb their rest, they could do whatever they pleased. Then, Ericum was fortunate to witness a flaming dragon soar into the sky from the distant manor. The dragon was a member of the new ninja clan, the products of the fire style, Great Fire Dragon technique. After Nao founded the new ninja clan in the eastern island nation, the Japanese, endowed with extraordinary powers, flocked to America seeking revenge. Under the command of the great nine-tailed fox, they attacked American celebrities, causing social unrest. These young Japanese soldiers, generally of the caliber of Junin, initially sought revenge against their American fathers out of sheer bravery. However, upon witnessing the slaughter of former American celebrities at their hands, the perverted bloodlust within their veins was unleashed. They gradually developed a love for the slaughter of distinguished figures, finding a perverse sense of satisfaction. At this point, New England ceased her guidance, and the young Japanese soldiers were unleashed, roaming freely within the United States. The 10 incidents reported in the news were, of course, only a fraction. The actual number of American celebrities killed was more than 10 times that. Aricum had no idea that these young Japanese had accomplished what he had longed to do, but had been unable to do for years. Seeing the extraordinary scene in the distance, Aricum felt a single longing: if only I too could possess extraordinary powers. As if a higher being had heard his inner call, an Asian man in a white robe and glasses, resembling a scientist, suddenly appeared before him. I can see that you have a strong hatred in your heart. The eyes behind the lenses seemed to penetrate Aricum's heart, making the 16-year-old boy nervous and panicked. What does it have to do with you? Don't be nervous. Don't you want to have extraordinary powers? Lin Hao stretched out his right hand, and a scepter appeared in his palm. The scepter was made of white bones, and the top was inlaid with a strange red gem, as red as blood. This scepter can help you summon the great Comanche warriors. They will follow you and destroy the Americans you hate. Lin Hao handed over the scepter. I checked some information and couldn't bear it any longer. I will finish the next chapter in the morning or at noon. Chapter 314 Young Hunter. Give it to me. Alicum, despite his youth, was cautious. He didn't rush forward, but instead took a step back. It seems you're not as brave as you thought. Lin Hao retracted the scepter, and a pale blue mist suddenly appeared behind him, revealing another dimension. Suddenly realizing what he was going through, what he was about to lose, Alicum lunged forward and grabbed the scepter from Lin Hao's hand. Boss, I want it. Haha, you're a clever kid. Lin Hao smiled. But you're not qualified to be my little brother right now. As he spoke, he flicked his hand and injected a ball of chakra into Alicum's body, naturally containing the memories contained in the chakra, some ninjutsu information. While other powers require a process of learning and mastering, only those above the 6 paths level can freely gift chakra, easily creating powerful beings. If you want to be my little brother one day, do your best and survive. With that, Lin Hao turned and walked into the pale blue mist, disappearing. Alicum, who remained on the rooftop, touched the scepter in his hand. The bones were etched, the gems captivating. Vampire Scepter, is that your name? From Minecraft, the Vampire Scepter. A divine artifact capable of summoning the undead, raising armies of vampire zombies to fight for its bearer. The Marvel Universe has its hells and its spirits. As the highest authority in the base universe, a cultivator who has begun to master the fundamental laws of the universe, even without the scepter brought back by the little devil, Lin Hao could have created an artifact with the same function. It was only by chance that he found such an object that Lin Hao identified the most suitable user. Could anything be more devastating to Americans than the return of Indian spirits to the North American continent? It would be a torture, both mentally and physically. Having been subjected to nothing but brainwashing for years, Alicum didn't understand much, but he possessed a rare talent as a hunter, like the outstanding members of the Comanche tribe. A hunter requires patience, the ability to conceal oneself, the ability to seize opportunities, and the ability to strike quickly, ruthlessly, and accurately. After receiving the vampire staff, Alicum didn't rush to show off like other children, or rush to seek revenge against those who had bullied him. Like a patient hunter, he waited for the perfect opportunity. Fortunately, it wasn't hard to wait. I heard a group of high-ranking figures from a charity foundation will be visiting tomorrow. Alicum flashed a bloodthirsty smile. As a teenager, he didn't understand the workings of the charity foundation, but the public's eyes were sharp. Having spent years there, how could Alicum know what a boarding school for Indian children was like? Every pretty girl and boy was summoned to the office by teachers or janitors for guidance. Even the skinny boy himself wasn't immune to this fate. Having made his decision, the Indian boy quietly ran back to the classroom with the vampire staff. In the distance, a figure shrouded in colorful light appeared at the burning manor. Carol, who had rushed from New York, didn't help put out the fire but instead searched the area, trying to find the extraordinary being who had committed the crime. Unfortunately, she didn't know about the Earth escape technique, and the young Japanese soldier from the new ninja sect had already used it to escape after killing someone. The next morning, the teachers and janitors at the boarding school urged the Indian children to clean themselves up and change into fresh clothes to welcome the distinguished guests. Listen up, everyone. A big shot is visiting today. Anyone who causes trouble won't be allowed home for the holidays. The principal, usually seen only by the prettiest girls and handsomest boys, made a rare appearance before the entire school. His expression was cold and stern, not kind or gentle. The principal, a master of taming animals, didn't forget to offer a sweet treat after his threat. If you behave well, you'll get beef burgers every day for the next month, and the best performing class will get double. Whenever big shots visit places like this, they're always accompanied by reporters, who happen to capture their charitable and affable behavior. Otherwise, why waste time visiting? It's all for the photos and subsequent news coverage. Every news broadcast is inevitably followed by donations from enthusiastic citizens. It was only natural to contribute a little to improve the little kids' meals. As for how much of the principal's approved food funds would be divided among the teachers, janitors, and cafeteria cooks, that was none of his business. If the big boys eat meat, the little ones should get some soup too, right? Hearing the principal's words, some of the more naive children looked expectant. But the older ones had already seen these empty promises and knew what the so-called beef burgers would ultimately become. They considered it a good idea to offer you a little beef sauce between two pieces of bread. Alicum, in the crowd, sneered, "Just wait, you'll soon see what despair is like." A little after 10 o'clock in the morning, the motorcade finally arrived. At the school gate, 2 rows of students, divided by gender, lined up, all of them the best looking. The well-dressed principal stood at the front, eagerly awaiting his arrival. But when he counted the number of vehicles, he frowned slightly. Among the attendees was only the secretary of the Aboriginal Protection Association. None of the promised board members, president, or even state legislators showed up. Mr. Richard, what's going on? The principal hurried over to the association's secretary, his face clearly irritated. As a relative of the foundation's president, he didn't need to be overly polite to a mere clerk. After all, the president had been the one who had caused the trouble. It's all because of the assassination attempt in the suburbs. The bigwigs are afraid to leave the house. Richard was equally displeased. He'd been scrambling for days to prepare for today's visit, finally securing it, promising a generous thank you fee for both parties. But now it had become such a mess, neither side had gotten any better or worse. The principal was being polite if he didn't curse. The principal's face was indeed livid, but after all these days of hard work, he couldn't expect nothing to come of it. He glanced at the cars behind him and demanded, "Are all the reporters here?" "Yes, they are. The Transcendents kill celebrities, so these little reporters don't worry about their own safety," Richard replied. "Excellent. You and your colleagues will pretend to be association leaders and take photos. Let the reporters polish the report." The principal, a seasoned veteran, quickly came up with a solution. Richard pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. If he didn't agree to the principal's proposal, all his hard work would be in vain. This was completely unbecoming of the capitalist spirit. Then, the school's prepared music began, its Indian-style music echoing over the school, sounding like summoning the spirits of dead Indian warriors. Chapter 315 The Dead Return, The Killing Begins. Erican couldn't tell whether the visitor was a prominent figure or not, but he didn't care, as the hunting preparations were complete. He had deliberately changed into traditional Indian attire, long leggings made of tanned and sewn bison hide, a small apron also made from bison around his waist, a high top, and finally a coarse linen cloak. Under normal circumstances, this attire would have earned him a severe reprimand from the school staff, as it contradicted their cultural indoctrination efforts. But today, there were visitors, and reporters were taking photos and videos. If the students weren't allowed to wear these attire, how could they prove to the public that this was a charity school for Indian children? Erican's attire didn't attract the staff's attention, even with a strange short staff in his hand. Elsewhere, the principal was escorting the prominent figures through the school's exhibition hall. A teacher from the school administration office spoke eloquently to the camera, acting as a guide. "Our school has been established for 30 years and has produced many outstanding talents for Arizona and the United States. If someone were to ask, what specific ones, at this point, He would be at a loss for words. This boarding school, which includes both an elementary and middle school, hasn't produced a single college student in 30 years. Don't think they're unwilling to even engage in ostentation. In fact, this is the norm for most community schools in America. High school students need letters of recommendation and impressive resumes to even secure an interview. Even ordinary white teenagers, like poor Spider, have to rack their brains, and these deliberately restricted Indian teenagers have even less hope. Of all the young Indians who make it to college, at least 99% are descendants of willing chiefs, and most of them are even half-blooded with some Indian blood. The so-called outstanding talents are nothing more than the $0 shopping workers and drug addicts active in the slums, who are essentially sent to prison the moment they leave school. The school adheres to the teaching philosophy of people-oriented and all-round development. The caring teachers provide patient and friendly education to the children who come out of primitive tribes. Caring, Alicum, who strode with a vampire scepter in hand, seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world, and said loudly, "Your love means that every year students are toyed to death by teachers." The sudden appearance of the teenager stunned the reporters and civil servants who were passing by for a moment. The principal stepped forward quickly and cast a cannibalistic look at Alicum. "What are you talking about? Didn't you take your medicine today?" Turning around, he became kind in front of the camera. "Don't mind, everyone, this is a child with mental illness in the school. We have hired a doctor for him. He takes medicine on time every day. Maybe the school clerk forgot today." Alicum laughed until tears were about to come out. "Since you're so compassionate, I'm sure you'll be deeply moved by the sight of the dead students." As he spoke, Alicum, wielding his vampire staff, slammed it heavily onto the ground. The eerie red gem suddenly glowed with a crimson light, immersing the surrounding earth. The next second, the ground began to tremble, first gently, then violently. The grass twitched and swayed as if struck by electricity, the soil particles at its roots pulsing with a strange force. A chilling breeze blew, sending a chill down the spines of every living being. "School worker, take him away." The principal's voice, shrouded in a horrified chord, was pierced by a bony claw that pierced the earth, revealing a gruesome white bone, still stained with rotting flesh. First one, then another, a pair of bony claws braced against the ground, lifting a terrifying skull with half a face. A single eyeball remained in the skull socket, and now it swirled wildly, rapidly locking onto the principal. Both sides froze for a moment. The skull's jaws opened and closed, the teeth clashing with a cacophony of sounds that was eerie. The next second, a hoarse voice rasped from the skeleton's rotting throat, "Principal Jack, long time no see." The pot-bellied Principal Jack leaped up as if struck by electricity. He tried to run, but as he turned, he stumbled and fell. The skeleton scrambled out, using both hands and feet to pounce on Principal Jack, its jaws wide open, biting down hard on his neck. A soft, sharp snap echoed across the school grounds. The frail skeleton possessed formidable bite force, severing Principal Jack's trachea and blood vessels in one bite. Blood gushed out, only to be consumed by the skeleton. The blood flowed down the skeleton's rotten esophagus into the skeleton's abdomen, its broken chest unable to contain the volume, and it sizzled out. As blood poured into the skeleton's body, the decaying flesh on its body strangely grew, eventually covering all bones, sealing any leaks and accelerating blood storage. The vampire staff summoned no ordinary skeletons, but vampire zombies. As they consumed more blood, they grew stronger, their appearance gradually returning to their former selves, though their skin became dry, pale, and lifeless. However, these zombies gained a significant boost in speed and strength. If there were no means to counter the undead, even if their bodies were destroyed, the staff's wielder could continue summoning them. This was the power of the undead artifact. Of course, there were more than just one undead in this school. Skeletons summoned by the vampire staff instantly appeared in every corner of the school. For 30 years, the bodies of the young boys who had been tortured to death were either disposed of or hastily buried in the hills behind the school, which once flourished with flowers and vegetation. Now, the dead have returned, slaughtering their former abusers with abandon. Screams echoed throughout the school. The civil servants and reporters from the Aboriginal Protection Association huddled together, trembling. They also wanted to flee, but the few who escaped were all tackled by the rotting skeletons, now their prey. "Please, please, let me go." Officer Richard trembled with fear, tears streaming down his face. Wasn't today just an ordinary fashion show? Why had he encountered such a terrifying supernatural being? "Is the camera working?" Alicum glanced at the discarded camera on the ground. Richard quickly grabbed a nearby reporter and pushed him hard. "Go and check it out." The reporter didn't want to move, but a zombie with blood-red muscle fibers stalked towards him. "Ah!" he screamed in fear and scrambled to the camera, beginning to fiddle with it. Yes, very good." Alicum stroked the scepter in his hand, forcing himself to remain calm. "Turn on the camera, notify the TV station, and broadcast the footage live." A closer look at the muscles in his hands revealed a noticeable tremor, clearly a bit of a struggle for a 16-year-old. But there's a beast hidden within everyone, especially an abused teenager like Alicum, who could either collapse and commit suicide or erupt into a bloodthirsty demon. Now, the demon has descended upon the world, baring its fangs against those who once wronged him. Reporters set up their cameras and trained them on Alicum. The television stations had already received the news, and the news vultures, desperate for ratings, hesitated only a second before interrupting the news. "Americans, the Indian warrior is about to return to the world. Clean your heads and wait for us to pry him open." The still childish voice echoed across the airwaves across America. The descendants of Anglo-Saxon pirates stared in horror at the Indian boy on the screen and the unmistakably inhuman vampires beside him. The ghosts of the Indian dead have returned. The brutal, bloodthirsty Indians are about to slaughter elegant, noble gentlemen once again. Chapter 316, The Anger and Fear of the White-Skinned Elite Eagles. The reappearance of Indian ghosts caused an uproar in American society. "Damn it! How could they return? Don't even think about taking our home. HMPH, they're just a bunch of dead savages. If they dare to come back, we'll kill them again." Those who harbored these sentiments were all well-educated American eagles. As for those who were uneducated and had been deceived by their permissive education, they felt no sympathy for the Indians. "Oh my God. The brutal Indians are back. Damn the government. Didn't they say they would protect their citizens? They're ghosts. They look terrifying. I've never seen a ghost in my life. If I could take a picture with them and post it on Twitter, I'd definitely get a lot of followers." These brainwashed people had long since accepted the label slapped on Indians by American leaders: bloody, brutal, barbaric, and backward. They firmly believed that the westward movement of North American immigrants was a reformation of civilization over barbarism, a revolution that advanced civilization on the American continent, and a salvation for the Native Americans by European gentlemen. Look at how well those chiefs who assimilated into civilized society lived. They fully enjoyed the fruits of advanced civilization. As for the ordinary Indians who perished in the process, were they even considered human? They were clearly uncivilized beasts, okay? The Phoenix National Guard quickly arrived at the scene, armed helicopters in the air and armored vehicles on the ground, completely encircling the exclusive school for Indian children. The young hunter had vanished, taking with him the souls of the deceased youths and all the living students who feared retribution. All that remained was a pile of blood-sucked white corpses and the utterly ignorant children who, in their panic, believed that Americans would treat them kindly. Damn it. The assailant is gone. Stop all traffic out of the city immediately and catch him. American elite eagles, well-versed in history, knew clearly what the souls of the once massacred Indians meant to white North Americans today. They were sworn enemies, and peaceful coexistence was impossible. When it came to African Americans, the white elite eagles could deceive themselves, granting a superficial equality to their former farm tools. However, American society maintained a tacit understanding regarding the Indians, relying solely on repression and brainwashing, not even bothering with superficial image-building efforts. The elite eagles knew exactly where their current lands came from. We've found his identity. Alicum, from the mountainous region bordering southeastern Arizona and New Mexico, is the last remaining Comanche. Send someone to capture his family. No, capture his entire tribe? This incident alarmed the provisional federal government outside New York. They didn't even bother tracking down the new ninja thugs, prioritizing Alicum. Soon, local military and police mobilized, but they only found a group of Comanches who refused to leave. Alicum's family had already been taken away by him. Shit, how could you be so fast? This kid must have mastered some supernatural power of rapid movement. We're in trouble. The most crucial question now is where he'll go. Estacado Plains. A military officer suddenly drew a circle on a digital map, encompassing southeastern Idaho, southern Wyoming, all of Utah and the Cordova, northeastern Nevada, Arizona, and northern New Mexico, 250,000 square miles. He must have gone here, what the Cordova people call the Land of the Cliffs. This was once the area where the Comanche were active, a fierce and nomadic Indian tribe that once terrified the American army and cowboys. This kid has clearly acquired the ability to summon the dead. He's definitely going to summon the dead Comanches here. Fuck. Order the Western Air Force to prepare. Fully munitions ready. Focus surveillance satellites on this area. If a large number of undead appear, bomb directly, but there are tens of millions of citizens living in such a large area. Direct bombing will further undermine the federal government's support. The domestic situation has been extremely tense over the past 2 years, and the West has always been divided into factions. What happened in Houston could easily spread throughout the West. Besides, there's no guarantee the Air Force pilots will carry out this order. Forget all that. First, notify the citizens of this area that brutal Indian ghosts will appear. Those who wish to leave will do so, and those who don't will leave as they please. Order the National Guard in each state to prepare for war. Ensure heavy garrisons at checkpoints connecting to the West. Clearly, the Northeast's financial consortiums were already prepared for the unrest from the Western barbarians. As the massive mold war machine began to operate, Ericum's whereabouts were quickly tracked. Just as the military staff had predicted, he had indeed arrived at the cliffland where the Comanche ancestors roamed, and where, over 100 years earlier, mold and cowboys had unleashed a bloody massacre. A young hunter, dressed in traditional Indian garb, trod across the overgrown ground. The vampire staff plunged into the soil, and a crimson glow spread across 100 kilometers. A moment later, countless skeletons emerged from the earth. Such a commotion couldn't be hidden from satellites, and missiles soon began to fire from the horizon. However, Ericum drew his staff, raised it high, and the crimson light receded, retrieving all the summoned skeletons into the gemstone atop it. After the little devil brought the vampire staff back, Lin Hao modified it, giving it numerous new capabilities to enable Ericum's young imp to engage in mobile warfare. Otherwise, given the nature of America's elite eagle, the imp's first major display would likely be met with a nuclear bomb. After collecting the undead skeletons, Ericum exploded in a puff of white smoke and vanished. Reverse necromancy. Lin Hao had specially adapted this technique for him, allowing the undead to serve as summoned beasts. The missiles struck, but nothing happened. Shit. This damned kid actually has special abilities. The elite eagle's scalps tingled. Being able to summon the undead was already a problem. After all, even they themselves didn't know how many Native Americans they had massacred in the 100 years since the nation's founding, let alone the number slaughtered by European colonists before that. Even the most charitable estimates put the number at least in the tens of millions. Comparing the footage captured at the Indian school, these undead skeletons possessed strength and speed far exceeding that of elite soldiers, even surpassing world champions. Tens of millions of undead skeletons, possessing superhuman speed and strength, wreaked havoc across North America. Capable of sucking blood for nourishment. Without a doubt, America faced its greatest crisis since its founding. They had originally planned to decapitate the undead before they could become a massacre. After all, the kids' superpowers couldn't reach all of North America in an instant. This summoning only extended to a radius of 100 kilometers. Who would have guessed this damned Indian kid had the ability to teleport? This was a serious problem. Fuck. The Chinese didn't attack, but the dead Indians are coming out to start a war. The white elite eagles further increased their war preparations, and all of America was suddenly engulfed in a bloody storm. Chapter 317 Carol, child, the past cannot be changed, let go of the hatred. Carol, the amazing woman who had just begun to assemble a team of extraordinary people, was suddenly bewildered by the overwhelming news coverage. What a joke. How could Indians, some issues, unless directly addressed, are often ignored. For example, when it comes to Native Americans, nearly all of America's elite eagles avoid the topic, and even the most compassionate philanthropists become embarrassed. For example, Carol, who sees herself as the universe's policeman, is fully aware of what Americans have done to Native Americans. However, because the past is irreversible, she chooses to ignore the issue, hypnotizing herself into a superhero who punishes evil and promotes good. However, when the ghosts of the deceased Native Americans return, the historical issues become starkly confronting her, forcing her to face this test of human nature. Carol's conscience tells her that the American genocide of Native Americans was wrong. She believes that if she were born 200 years ago and possessed the superpowers she has today, she would have stopped the massacre and worked to find a way for both sides to coexist peacefully. History's irreversible now. Are tens of millions, even hundreds of millions, of Americans going to have to pay for past mistakes? They're all innocent. We must find this kid and convince him to let go of his hatred, Carol resolved. Callison, contact the few potential companions you've identified and invite them. Phil Callison frowned and said regretfully, I'm somewhat confident I can convince Melinda to join, but the other Transcendents will surely be too proud. I'm afraid I won't be able to persuade them willingly. Easy. Tell them I'm their captain, and I'll be on TV soon, Carol said proudly. On TV? Callison was stunned. That's right, Carol nodded confidently. This Indian boy is sure to cause a big stir. I'll find him, defeat him, and convince him to let go of his hatred. Alright, then. I'll look forward to the captain's wonderful performance. Callison, the so-called honest man, aligned himself with the American Eagle on the issue of the Indians. What else? Should we call on Americans to leave the North American continent and return their homes to the Indians? Even willing to die to atone for past atrocities? You're completely out of your mind. Carol's prediction was correct. Ericum was indeed planning something major. He spent several days traveling through the areas where the Comanche once operated, focusing on sites of major battles and massacres. The fact that a young man without elite education could accurately locate these locations was truly a tribute to the arrogant eagle who never considered Indian massacres a crime. Numerous records of Indian wars can be found online, and even commanders who had participated in these battles and massacres meticulously documented the events, publishing them in books to profit and show off their prowess. After amassing over 300,000 undead skulls, Ericum began his move. He had originally intended to sneak to New York, but Lin Hao pointed him to a new destination, Los Angeles, a major city in the American West. Ericum, unfazed by the implications, unconditionally followed his future boss's orders. Christmas 2010 was approaching, and Los Angeles was filled with a festive atmosphere. Despite the numerous disasters that have befallen America over the past 2 years, supernatural beings seem particularly fond of the Northeast, particularly Washington, D.C. Los Angeles, located on the West Coast and second only to New York in size, has been largely untouched by supernatural beings for over 2 years. Aside from a massive explosion in a normally closed downtown mansion in early 2008, the only other incidents were the recent anti-Chinese riots surrounding the launch of a SHIE spacecraft. This has given the people of Los Angeles, located in the Southwest, an inexplicable sense of superiority over the people of Washington, D.C. Our feng shui is excellent. Regional discrimination exists in every country, even in America, a country without a rich history. Sadly, on this sunny afternoon, the pride of over 2 years among Los Angeles residents was easily shattered. As the sun reached its zenith, the yang energy should have been strong, but a sudden, cold wind swept through downtown Los Angeles, bringing with it a pervasive stench. Those who frequently perform autopsies will immediately recognize the stench of corpses, and the stench of long decomposing corpses. Where did these bodies come from? Jean Cooper, a coroner who had long worked with corpses, was in Los Angeles on business. She smelled the sudden stench of decay in the air and immediately recognized it. However, before she could reach the hotel balcony, a series of screams erupted from all directions. As a professional insider, she realized something terrible was happening and quickly rushed to the balcony, closing the door and drawing the curtains, only lifting a corner to peek outside. Over 300,000 dead Indians suddenly appeared within the 1,213.8 square kilometers of downtown Los Angeles. These skeletons, some mounted, some horseless, roamed the streets, pouncing on the living, biting off necks and guzzling blood. The blood soaked the white skeletons, as if they were covered in red. A moment later, a thin layer of muscle fibers covered the pale skeletons. Hiss, Jean Cooper, who had been peeping from inside the hotel, gasped, stunned. The images in the news are actually real. As a professional, she had previously refrained from believing the resurrection of the dead. Dead was dead. She'd dissected countless corpses, and never seen one suddenly jump up and bite her. So, she'd refused to believe a word of the previous news. Stubbornly, she finally believed only now that the dead truly could be resurrected. Over 300,000 Indian ghosts suddenly appeared across Los Angeles. Within moments, over 300,000 living people were captured and bled to death. The stench of blood temporarily overwhelmed the stench of decay. By the time the reckless reporter appeared in the sky helicopter, the Indian ghosts had already begun their third round of slaughter. In just over 10 minutes, They had drained the blood of over 1 million Angelinos. The pale skeletons, now encased in red and white muscle, had increased their speed and strength, their killing efficiency skyrocketing. Carol, upon hearing the news, raced to the scene. Though she departed from New York, she arrived in a flash. Flying at the speed of light, the scene was terrifying. She found the young Indian boy perched atop a tall building, quickly landed in front of him, and shouted, "Stop, kid, the past cannot be changed. Don't let hatred consume you." Ericum turned around, stunned, pointed at himself, and asked blankly, "Are you talking to me?" Of course, Carol looked around, but didn't see the strange scepter in the boy's hand. Years of battling various extraordinary beings in the universe had honed Carol's discerning eye, and she had already identified the unique characteristics of the vampire scepter from the news footage. Me. Ericum's face was full of disbelief. "You want me to let go of hatred, Auntie? Have you experienced my past? Just let me give up hatred, child. No matter what you have experienced in the past, slaughtering innocent people will never make you happy." "Who said that?" Ericum interrupted her. "I am very happy." Carol frowned and said in a serious voice, "It seems that you have serious psychological problems. Don't worry, I will ask the best doctor to treat you." "Ha ha ha ha!" Ericum burst into laughter. "Here we go again, here we go again. You disgusting white ghosts are so lazy that you don't even want to change your excuse." "Oh, child, you do have enough," Ericum shouted harshly. "You are the one who is sick. You bunch of hateful white ghosts, slaughtered my ancestors and took away our homes. Why didn't you jump out to stop them at that time? Now it's my turn to take revenge, but you jump out and ask me to let go of hatred. I'm going to vomit my breakfast." Carol suppressed her sympathy and said sternly, "It seems I can't convince you with words." With a bang, Ericum exploded into a puff of white smoke, revealing only a shadowy clone. "Ho ha ho ha, that's how you white-skinned ghosts behave. You usually wear a mask of hypocrisy, but when your interests are affected, you immediately reveal your bandit face." Ericum's sneer echoed over Los Angeles. "Sorry, I almost forgot, you are the descendants of bandits and thieves. Today, let you filthy bastards receive the revenge of the Indian warriors." The massacre continued, and blood filled Los Angeles. Furious, Carol couldn't find the real culprit, so she could only punch and clear the city of vampires. "I'll add another chapter, I'll do my best. The rest of the story is all exciting, so can I ask for a few monthly votes? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318, Revenge of the Indian Warrior. Malibu is located west of Los Angeles, approximately 48 kilometers from downtown. Tony Stark's clifftop villa is located there. Shortly after over 300,000 undead Indians appeared in downtown Los Angeles, Jarvis, who had been monitoring the network for unusual information, immediately reported the situation to his master. Tony Stark's condition remained poor, and he continued to drink heavily. However, perhaps inspired by the launch of the SHIE spaceship, he had recently been researching high-power engines and high-strength materials. These could be used in armor and indirectly accelerate America's spacecraft development. He remained proud at heart and a staunch Americocentricist. If America's enemies were still powerful superhumans like those in the Tokyo incident, he might have truly become increasingly depressed and irritable, sinking into despair due to the lack of hope. However, the sudden launch of the SHIE spaceship seemed to divert his attention, allowing him to return to areas where he still had influence. Humanity is like this. The greatest fear is a lack of hope and a lack of goals. Having regained a goal, Tony Stark deliberately forgot about the powerful superhumans he could never reach and focused his attention on researching engines and materials. Not to mention, with his ridiculously high IQ, he'd actually made some progress. If the world hadn't been in turmoil, with a few years' worth of time, perhaps he could have helped America build a spaceship. But things are unpredictable, and America's troubles are inevitable. Sir, a large number of blood-sucking skeletons have appeared in downtown Los Angeles. It's the work of a supernatural being. 5 days ago, similar objects first appeared at a boarding school for Native American children in Phoenix. Jarvis opened different windows, explaining recent events in America. Haha, here we go again. Tony, already numb, twitched his lips. He was used to the constant stream of trouble in his country, If there were no trouble for several months in a row, he'd be accustomed to it. The mastermind behind this incident is him, a young Comanche Indian. He's claimed to summon the spirits of the dead Native Americans to seek revenge against America. It seems he's telling the truth, Jarvis. That's not a funny joke. Tony's mouth continued to twitch. Soon, his brain, still not completely ravaged by alcohol, immediately realized something. Oh no. Those guys in New York might be about to launch another nuclear bomb. The provisional federal government in New York was controlled by conglomerates and political and military families. These guys, even if they dared to plant mushrooms in Washington, wouldn't mind launching another one elsewhere if they could find a plausible excuse. Logically, they were all on their own turf, so they'd always take care of their own supplies. However, the 10 major conglomerates were anything but harmonious. A conglomerate is essentially a trust, a capital monopoly. If possible, a single conglomerate would monopolize all means of production and social resources, securing exclusive control. They reject upstarts and flock to any emerging capital hotspot, either acquiring or suppressing it. Those unwilling to accept their rules would have no hope of obtaining capital, raw materials, or expanding their market. The emergence of the 10 major conglomerates was both a historical legacy and a fortuitous coincidence. Without the 2 world wars, the rising power of the California and Texas conglomerates would have had no chance of rising to power. After taking power, the 2 emerging financial groups in the West and South have been constantly competing with the established financial groups for market share. Each side has its share of victories and defeats. Despite cross-holdings, they still retain their core industries, which are the foundation of their respective existence. As an insider, Tony understands the open and covert infighting between the 2 sides. If they can find a plausible excuse, the financial groups entrenched in the Northeast will not hesitate to give the upstart arms tycoons in the Southwest a hard blow. After all, in their eyes, population is just a quantifiable resource. As long as America maintains its tradition as a beacon of freedom, there will be no shortage of elite immigrants yearning for freedom. As for cheap labor, there is even less worry. If there is a gap in the border wall to the south, there will be plenty of cheap labor to come. Otherwise, how do you think millions of illegal immigrants are created each year? Can't the old soldiers even defend their own borders? That's not just a few hundred people, it's millions. Tony Stark's guess was correct. The capitalist mindset is always pragmatic. As long as the problem can be solved, public opinion is not difficult to appease. After all, with public opinion surging, all we had to do was blame the federal government. It was all the politicians' fault, so what did it have to do with us capitalists? We're just businessmen with a sense of social responsibility. The president? Didn't you elect him? Is it my fault? Meanwhile, a debate was erupting in the temporary government headquarters outside New York City. They had learned of what was happening in Los Angeles. There are too many monsters, and the military is completely ineffective. Decisive measures must be taken to curb the spread of the monsters. We can't use nuclear bombs. There are still over 3 million people in the city, with Washington, D.C., experiencing persistent troubles for over 2 years. New York, too close, felt equally unsafe. Los Angeles, with its unique feng shui, became a new choice for new immigrants and former Americans, leading to a significant population increase from over 4 million to 5 million. It's going to be gone. At the rate the monsters are killing us, the few people in Los Angeles won't even make it to nightfall. They're all going to die anyway, so why not make their deaths count? Shit, Los Angeles is our territory. Mr. Crocker, please watch your words. Los Angeles is America's Los Angeles, not just some people's Los Angeles. Go to hell. Who in this office doesn't know what's going on? We absolutely do not agree with the use of nuclear bombs. The Los Angeles Consortium representatives naturally couldn't stand by and watch their base being overgrown with mushrooms. To put it bluntly, it didn't matter if the population died. Vampire zombies couldn't destroy the city on a large scale anyway. As long as their territory remained, why worry about no one immigrating? Sorry, the missiles have already taken off. Fuck you. Downtown Los Angeles gradually became a ghost town, littered with white and black people drained of all their blood. The Indian undead were no longer skeletons, they had grown back flesh and skin, though their skin was pale, like the white ghosts they hated. Despite their dislike for the Indians, the warriors fighting power sought after regaining their bodies. They scoured the city for weapons, crafting spears and bows. Armed with weapons, the Indian warriors reached peak strength, The savages that once terrified European settlers returning to the world. Kill all the white devils. Scalp them, pry open their skulls, and fill their skulls with feces. Alicum's voice echoed over Los Angeles, and the Indian warriors, receiving the order, smiled stiffly. Tooth for tooth, blood for blood. The slaughter continued, but the tactics were no longer simply neck-biting and blood-sucking. Indian warriors scavenged boning knives from supermarkets, weapon shops, and even kitchens, carrying out their leaders' orders. Skinning and deboning, they treated the animals like livestock. Actually, there was no difference. Even more devastating howls echoed over Los Angeles. Assholes, Carol gritted her teeth as she walked down the street. She began moving at lightning speed, charging at the Indian zombies she saw, turning them into balls of rotting blood. What? Are you mad? 2 rows of Aricum's shadow clones appeared on the tall buildings on both sides of the street. Seeing Carol's reaction, he shouted with derision. We're just repeating what you did to the Indians. Put yourself in their shoes. Why can't you just accept it? Facts aside, aren't you completely innocent? Carol suddenly leaped up, a flash of light swirling around, and she blasted the 2 rows of shadow clones from the tall buildings. But more clones continued to appear. The vampire staff not only summoned vampire zombies, but also increased the physical and mental strength of its bearer as the zombies grew stronger. Otherwise, a single decapitation tactic could easily defeat it, so how could it be called a divine weapon? Aricum's chakra and pain tolerance had been greatly increased by the vampire staff, allowing him to wield multiple shadow clones at will. Tisk, 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 look at your furious face. Why aren't you worried while the Americans are wreaking havoc around the world? Sure enough, you only know the pain when the knife cuts you. Lin Hao, who had been watching from the sidelines, saw Aricum slamming Carol's face until it turned pale and black. He smiled knowingly. This kid, he's quite talented, but it's time to retreat. Let's go to another city next time. With that, Lin Hao teleported deep underground, where Aricum's true form was hiding, holding the vampire scepter. Boss, seeing Lin Hao reappear, Aricum approached with a smile. How did I do? It's time to go. The American nuclear bomb is coming, Lin Hao said. Okay, Aricum was obedient. In his entire life, no one, except his parents, had treated him as well as Lin Hao. Not only did they grant him extraordinary powers, but they also taught him how to think and act. Do you know why we chose Los Angeles first? Lin Hao took the opportunity to give him a piece of his mind. I don't understand. Aricum shook his head. He raised his scepter high and recalled the undead on the ground. The 2 of them disappeared immediately. Because this nuclear bomb will officially split the United States, Lin Hao laughed. The only thing missing is a small spark to ignite the civil war. Aricum suddenly became smart and continued with a smile. Boss, I think I should be considered a flame, not a spark. Carol, who was fighting vampire zombies on the ground, suddenly found that the zombies had disappeared. However, before she could be surprised, a bright star flew over the horizon. She was stunned for a moment. The combat instincts she had cultivated over the years made her feel a hint of threat from the missile. Just a hint, not much. But the warhead was self-evident that she felt the threat. Without thinking, she soared into the sky and flew into space with the missile. Chapter 319, Southwest Mutual Protection, State Separation. As the missile hurtled toward Los Angeles, Tony Stark had already donned his armor, but Jarvis suddenly caught sight of a flash of colored light flying toward the missile, then saw its trajectory change, soaring into space. Who's that? The scruffy bearded Tony frowned. Sir, the missile has reached space, and the crisis in Los Angeles is over, Jarvis concluded. You're wrong. The crisis has only just begun. It will be a major crisis across America, Tony said, his face filled with frustration. Despite his wealth, he was powerless to stop the Northeastern Financial Consortium from wreaking havoc on the Southwestern Financial Consortium. From the moment the missile took off, whether it hit Los Angeles or not would no longer matter. The California Consortium would be alienated from the Northeastern Financial Consortium, and trust would cease. This was why Lin Hao deliberately chose Los Angeles. He was certain the Northeastern Financial Consortium would resolve the issue with a nuclear bomb. Whether the bomb exploded or not was irrelevant. What mattered was a single attitude. The 10 major consortiums shared a commonality, a disregard for the lives of civilians and a preoccupation with profit, the latter of which guaranteed a reconcilable conflict. This can't go on. The directors of the California Consortium, having narrowly escaped death, immediately convened an internal online meeting. The patriarch of the Giannini family, who controlled Bank of America, declared flatly, "Northeastern Jews not only control our voting rights, they now want to control our lives." In the world of capital, any consortium seeking to grow and prosper must establish its own financial core, the most common of which is to establish its own bank. The Giannini family, descendants of Italian immigrants, founded the Bank of Italy in the early 20th century, which merged with the California Bank of America in the 1930s, becoming Bank of America. Through the arms trade during World War II, the bank surpassed New York's Chase National Bank to become the largest commercial bank in the United States. However, the majority voting rights in Bank of America are now controlled by the Morgan and First City Bank consortiums, and the California consortium's influence in Bank of America is far less than before. Beyond the financial sector, even the arms industry, upon which the consortium's foundation was founded, has seen partial equity in Lockheed Aircraft, Litton Industries, and Northrop Grumman Corporation, which have been seized by Northeastern financial consortiums. The California conglomerate situation was essentially similar to that of the Texas conglomerate, which had also risen to prominence during World War II. "Let's unite," proposed the San Francisco-based Fargo family patriarch. "Combine with the Texas rednecks and form the Southwest Alliance to formally counter the Jews of the Northeast." "That's divisive." The other family patriarchs hesitated. "What can we do? If the Jews do it a few more times, they'll be dead," the Giannini family patriarch said fiercely. "They started it first, so we must fight back. I think we should raise the flag first to express our stance. We'll see how the Jews and Westerners react before we proceed. People always like to compromise." This idea was ultimately unanimously agreed. Frequent secret meetings began between the California and Texas conglomerates. The Texas conglomerate's leaders, all young and energetic, immediately echoed the proposal. They had long disliked the Jews of the Northeast, not to mention the bombing of their home base in Houston. On the first day of the year 2011, the southwestern states of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas suddenly announced the formation of the Southwest Alliance, a unified deliberative and coordinating body, a coalition of state governments. Ostensibly, this was to jointly address extraordinary crises and provide mutual assistance, dubbed Southwest Mutual Protection. In reality, anyone with even a modicum of political common sense knew this was a countermeasure to the provisional federal government in the Northeast. The news sent shockwaves through the world. While the world knew America had endured a difficult 2 years, they never anticipated the accumulation of internal conflict to the point where it would spawn secessionist forces. Upon hearing the news, the Northeastern Provisional Government immediately convened a denunciation meeting against the 4 southwestern states. They gathered all the legislators, generals, and politicians from the provisional government and launched a fierce denunciation campaign. Have your brains been eaten by Indian zombies? Are you trying to make a fool of yourself by splitting at this time? These legislators, generals, and politicians from the 4 southwestern states, having received the advice of their families, knew that secession might not be a good solution, but it was the most effective way to express their stance. The Northeastern financial conglomerates have been suppressing them for over half a century. To think they could beg them to quell their desire to annex them is sheer wishful thinking. The words of a great Eastern figure couldn't be more apt at this moment. Peace survives when it's sought through struggle. Peace dies when it's sought through compromise. If they continue to compromise, there might be no one to stop the next nuclear bomb. Besides, war isn't necessarily a bad thing. Only war can profoundly alter the current situation and help them completely break free from the shackles of the Northeastern financial conglomerates. After all, the casualties will be the lower classes. The moment the nuclear bombs launch, the whole world will be watching us laugh, the congressman from the 4 southwestern states sneered. What government in the world would so easily drop nuclear bombs on its own territory? You destroyed the federal constitution. As we've already said, the nuclear bombs are to deal with the damned Indian ghosts. Even if Los Angeles is damaged, we can help rebuild it, the Squid representative said righteously. Reconstruction, the generals from the 4 southwestern states scoffed. Will reconstruction naturally become your business? The Squid representatives were speechless, but immediately launched into high-sounding rhetoric. You are undermining America's strength. If the situation collapses, you will be America's sinners. Why didn't some people consider the weakening of America's strength when they pressed the trigger? The representatives from the 4 southwestern states sneered. The already divided situation could not be restored with a few words, unless the Northeastern Financial Consortium was willing to give up some of its interests and pay real money to buy back the hearts of the Southwestern Financial Consortium. However, if the stingy Jews wanted to spit out the meat they had already swallowed, they might as well pray for Jesus to rise again and kill Judas directly. The dispute over the temporary government's headquarters was doomed to be fruitless, but the influence of Southwest Mutual Protection spread rapidly. Over the past 2.5 years, the situation in the United States has been deteriorating. Sadako diligently expanded the ranks of civilian eunuchs, and these mixed bunches of good and bad had already caused unrest among the American people. The summoning method for the demon god, spread by those who had participated in the ritual and survived, did not end with Washington's disappearance. Instead, it led Americans, feeling threatened, to abandon their fear of evil rituals and pursue supernatural powers. After entering the country, the Japanese invaders of the new ninja sect began to prey on American celebrities, further exacerbating tensions within the United States. The most direct consequence was a multifold increase in domestic arms sales over the past 2 years. The Southwest Mutual was a signal that completely exposed America's veil, making the American people clearly aware of the depth of the crisis. The federal government's weaknesses were clearly revealed at this time. Seeing the 4 southwestern states form an alliance, the southeastern states of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama also joined forces to form the Florida Confederation, accelerating the process of state secession. Soon, brazen local factions such as the Northwest Mutual and the Central Alliance emerged. The speed of the collapse was so rapid that it shocked and incomprehensible to Carol and others. Phil Callison had just recruited his old colleague, Melinda May, into his extraordinary team, and in the blink of an eye, his beloved homeland was torn apart. What the hell? Why did it come to this? Carol, a former soldier, was completely baffled by the political dynamics. Although she had witnessed many alien civilizations, those aliens, armed with high-tech weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, were probably no more politically savvy than even an Earth Village chief. It's obvious that the nuclear bomb in Los Angeles has made Californians lose their faith in the federal government. Melinda, perhaps inheriting her American political acumen, quickly identified the root cause. But even with that, there was no turning back. The Indian kid is probably being manipulated, Callison gritted his teeth. Even if he'd come to New York, it wouldn't have led to this situation. Coming to New York to cause trouble would only result in casualties. The Jews who run the financial conglomerates might not be willing to grow mushrooms there. Even if they were, other local conglomerates would praise them for their high moral integrity, and the current state of disunity wouldn't have occurred. The mastermind had clearly calculated a Jewish weakness of taking advantage. Carol roared in frustration, I'm only here to be a superhero, not to meddle in politics. The current situation was beyond her capabilities. If there was a clear enemy, she could have swiftly dispatched them, but now, Carol couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. Phil Callison, a skilled agent, was equally unable to resolve the situation, leading him to lament, if only Director Fury were still here. It wasn't that Nick Fury was capable of handling the situation, but at least someone was giving him orders. He simply had to follow them without any further thought. Nick Fury, the figure Callison had been so obsessed with, was currently aboard a Macro spaceship, heading towards the solar system. Macro 4 was extremely far from the solar system. Unlike the magic of Kamartaj and the breach in the Space Stone, space jump technology didn't allow for point-to-point travel, but rather created a fast path connecting 2 points. Travel within this path still took time. So when Nick Fury returned to Earth on the Macro spaceship, he was shocked to find that his beloved America was already falling apart. Is America going to cease to exist? Chapter 320, was it you who brought the aliens to Earth? The moment the Macro ship emerged from the wormhole and entered the solar system, SHIO radar detected it. Since taking over Kree territory, SHIO has naturally acquired numerous advanced technologies and is currently constructing a systemic defense in the Kuiper Belt, the outer reaches of the solar system. If the system's energy shield is activated at any cost, it will restrict unauthorized space jumps and prevent alien spacecraft from directly entering the solar system. Construction is currently in its infancy, and aside from a large number of engineering robots, only a few SHIO agents are stationed aboard. The Macro, having entered the system directly through space jumps, didn't even notice any movement in the outer asteroid belt, completely unaware of the treacherous terrain they had entered. Nick Fury, aboard the ship, had no idea that Earth had undergone such profound changes less than a year after his departure. "Where is this place you're talking about?" the macro named Gu ordered his men to fetch Nick Fury, pointing to the blue planet in front of the ship and demanding. Nick Fury's mind raced as he spoke. "Your Majesty, I need to communicate with my own country first. This will give you a good opportunity to gather information on recent developments on Earth. After all, the enemy who trapped Makon in the mountain is likely still in some country on Earth. I believe you also wish to find this person and avenge your people." "Very good, very good. It seems I've arrived just in time." Lin Hao suddenly appeared on the macro ship, pulled out his personal terminal, and filmed the conversation between Nick Fury and the macro. Meanwhile, Earth's internet and radio signals were controlled by the SHIER, forcing them to rebroadcast the conversation. "What's going on? Why is the internet down? We're getting footage. Holy crap. What the hell is this giant creature? It's so ugly." "Eyes. My eyes." The macro's appearance quickly sparked discussion among Earthlings. With his lush green body, horse face, fish fins, snake tail, and a pair of bat wings on his back, he looked like a collection of monstrous creatures, a stark reminder that he wasn't born according to the instructions. However, when the camera panned to Nick Fury, the Earthlings' complaints about the macro's appearance were instantly silenced, and they became curious about the black man's identity. "Who is this black man? He's actually Cyclops? He looks familiar, like he's been on the news somewhere. He speaks English. My goodness, a monster speaks English too. He wants to contact a country? Which country is he from? Wait, this monster is an alien." Lin Hao, the on-site photographer, expertly used his equipment, applying the techniques he'd learned to capture the entire spacecraft control center. He acted confidently, completely ignoring the macro around him, as the aliens couldn't see him. "Don't try to be snarky. I don't mind destroying this planet." From his seat on the stone throne, Gu looked down at Nick Fury, who stood below. He was completely unaware that the camera was pointed at his face. "Of course, it's your highness's freedom to do what you want." Nick Fury remained calm, also unaware of the camera's focus. "But the one who sealed Makon over 2,000 years ago must be a powerful being hidden on Earth, and he could very well cause you trouble. Of course, I believe His Majesty the Ancient King will ultimately resolve this problem. But if I could contact my country first, perhaps I could help His Majesty the Ancient King mitigate this." Nick Fury was resolute. He had to first speak with the American government and secretly convey his intentions. His original plan was to return to Earth with the Skrulls. With the Skrulls' support, he could maintain some leverage in negotiations with the Makuro. But who could have imagined the Skrulls would suddenly abandon him? He had spent over 20 years employing thugs, only to have them backstab him at the most crucial moment. This left Nick Fury deeply disheartened. The Makuro ships had already scanned Earth, but the eastern Eurasian continent was encircled by a formation Lin Hao had preemptively deployed, rendering the scan completely invisible. While Gu had a hot temper, he was not reckless. A reckless person would not have led his tribe to the throne of Makuro civilization. The fact that the ship's scans could be disabled meant this backward planet must hold some secrets. He pondered for a moment before agreeing to Nick Fury's request. Black Brine Egg was brought to the control panel. The operating system used by the Makuro civilization, devoid of production and focused solely on plunder, was naturally a common system in the universe. Nick Fury had learned how to operate it aboard the Skrull ship. At that moment, everyone on Earth, aside from those who already recognized him, was curious about who he would contact. Outside New York, at the temporary government headquarters, everyone in the office area had no time to react with anger or panic over SHIER's hijacking of their signal. Instead, they cried out in their hearts, "Don't call. Don't call. Don't contact us. Idiot Nick, Carol, something's happened." Phil Coulson burst into Carol's room, shouting, "Director Fury is back, but he's been tricked." By then, Carol had already moved Coulson, Melinda May, and several familiar swordsmen Coulson had previously trained to the farm of her friend Maria Rambo. There, they would establish a superhero team's headquarters using Carol's spaceship. Carol ran to the television, caught sight of the screen, and bolted out the door, hurtling into space. She wanted to stop Nick Fury from calling the American government, who was clearly unaware that his actions were being broadcast live around the world. America has already lost enough face. If the world were to see Americans colluding with aliens to harm Earth's nations, they would be abandoned by the world, their people condemned to death. Secret contact with aliens could be done in secret, And even if it were known to the leaders of other countries, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the world must not know. It's like this, the leaders of various countries have clearly recognized Nick Fury, but as long as he doesn't contact the American government in front of the world, that doesn't count as evidence, and America will have plenty of excuses to exonerate itself. Carol rushed out of Earth, surveying the void, and immediately located the macro ship floating in low Earth orbit. As she rushed over, she suddenly realized she couldn't move. Even the colorful light around her body flickered, as if it would die at any moment. Who? Carol was shocked, but she immediately locked onto a suspect. It's him. It had to be the Asian man who had destroyed the Kree army with a wave of his hand. This situation today must have been orchestrated by SHIE. It's over, as expected. The clueless Nick Fury dialed a secure communication channel that allowed him to directly contact the President of the United States. It was a coincidence that SHIE didn't control these communication channels used by the American higher-ranking officials. Hiding in the bunker, Tom Vilsack and his staff were startled by the sudden ringing of the phone. What the hell? Isn't it turned off? Don't answer it. Absolutely don't answer it. Smash it. Smash it. The tiny mobile phone was like a bomb, causing the American higher-ranking officials to avoid it. In fact, the phone at this moment was no different from a bomb, and its power far exceeded that of a nuclear bomb. A burly general immediately grabbed the phone and slammed it to the ground. Not satisfied, he stomped on it again and again. However, this was a presidential device, with even higher specifications than military equipment. It was not only highly confidential but also sturdy, waterproof, electrical, and fireproof. After stopping for a long time, the metal casing didn't bend, but it seemed to hit the answer button, and Nick Fury's voice was heard. Mr. Ellis, this is Nick Fury. He hadn't realized the former president had been reduced to charcoal. After all, such a shocking event hadn't occurred in centuries. Isn't it me? The general exclaimed, terrified. It's definitely not you, the government official beside him pointed to the screen. Two windows appeared, one showing the caller, Nick Fury, and the other showing the live broadcast. Now, everyone in the world knew who the black man on the alien ship was talking to. Nick Fury, aboard the macro ship, also saw the screen, but the man on it wasn't President Ellis, but the former Secretary of Agriculture. Mr. Tom, how could it be you? Shut up, Tom Vilsack, with preternatural speed, thought of a response. He shouted, you were the one who brought the aliens to Earth? Nick Fury was stunned, surprised that Tom was sitting in the main seat in the office, and completely bewildered by the words. Fortunately, he wasn't stupid and reacted immediately. Haha, you've figured it out. I'm actually a Skrull. With a snap, the live stream cut out. His words were never heard, leaving the world frozen in his stunned expression. Outrage spread across the globe. Damn Americans. They're colluding with aliens. It's over. The aliens are coming. They're going to destroy Earth. Damn Americans. They're the sinners of humanity. Kill all Americans. Cut them into pieces. Nuclear bomb. Launch the nuclear bomb immediately. Destroy America. At that moment, every patriot in America felt a sudden wave of dizziness. Tony Stark fell backward, eliciting an emergency call from Jarvis. The fake captain and Sam Wilson, known as the Falcon, slumped to their seats. Crossbones, beside them, smirked secretly, pretending to sit down on the floor to fit in. Coulson and Melinda stared at each other blankly, a feeling of sadness and helplessness before the storm. The real captain, Steve Rogers, was recruiting in Texas with a group of teammates when he saw this absurd scene from a large screen facing the street. Captain, this country is hopeless, Johnny Blaze sneered beside him, destroy it and rebuild it. Chapter 321 If miracles have a color, it must be Chinese red. Nigger, what were you talking about? Gu stood up from his throne, strode towards Nick Fury at the control panel, and lifted him up with a mighty hand. Nick Fury had just had a sudden inspiration and lied about being a Skrull in an attempt to avert the crisis. Although he didn't know what was happening at the moment, his intuition, cultivated through years of Secret Service, allowed him to accurately predict the most likely crisis and respond decisively and effectively. Whatever the crisis, wouldn't denying his identity provide him with room for maneuver? Unfortunately, his reaction was predicted and the internet connection was disconnected. While the crisis on Earth was uncertain, the danger posed by the macro was imminent. I'll lead the way myself, Nick Fury shouted. The macro had come from afar for their people, and the statement would definitely alleviate the current crisis. As expected, Goo's fingers stopped exerting force, giving Nick Fury a moment to breathe. However, he didn't let go of the black man in his grasp, still threatening, "One more minute of delay, and I'll kill you." Black Egg acted as a guide, pointing in the direction of Eurasia. The macro ship descended in his direction. Trapped in space, Carol watched helplessly as the ship flew toward that terrifying country. She struggled mightily to rescue her friend Nick Fury, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break through Lin Hao's self-created immobilization technique. Meanwhile, Earth's liver stream resumed after an unexpected hiccup. Photographer Lin Hao left the macro ship and ventured outside, chasing it and filming the entire scene, releasing a detailed, uncut footage of the alien spacecraft descending upon Earth. Tisk, tisk, what director has this opportunity? Other directors rely on screens and special effects, but Director Lin can chase the aliens and film them recreating the entire scene. The ship was moving at a tremendous speed. Within 2 minutes, humans across Eurasia could see with the naked eye a ship the size of a mountain descending from the sky. The macro were already enormous, and this ship, the flagship of the tribe commanded by Gusuo, was several times larger than Thanos' Temple II. It's over, Earth is over. Seeing such a massive ship, many timid Earthlings lost their courage to resist. Even without weapons, a collision with this ship could collapse the continent. Americans, you deserve death, haha, the end of the world has finally come. God, who'll save us? Just as humanity worldwide fell into despair, the SHIEA's fortress, its remaining spacecraft, and its aerospace fighters took off, resolutely confronting the massive alien ship. Lin Hao, the cinematographer and director, immediately captured the warriors' heroic figures. A stirring score suddenly played in the live broadcast, inspiring everyone. The dazzling, eye-catching red in the footage instilled hope in the despairing Earthlings. If miracles had a color, it would surely be Chinese red. As the world fell silent, only the soldiers draped in red flags charged relentlessly toward the hostile alien spacecraft. Though seemingly insignificant in comparison, their momentum was breathtaking, their unwavering resolve unwavering. They demonstrated with their actions that no enemy, not even aliens, could destroy this nation, this people. Damn it, aliens! Let's fight them. Suddenly, a large number of fighter jets were launched from the northern Eurasian countries, along with a 1,000-man nano-armored force. Hooray! The pilots tossed away their freshly downed vodka bottles, floored the throttles, and revved their engines to full power. Perhaps inspired by this momentum, the countries of Central and Western Eurasia mobilized as well. Every fervent warrior, still fervent, rushed to their aircraft, taking off with a death-defying determination, charging towards the behemoth in the sky. Lin Hao captured every scene and broadcast it live. Thank goodness I can teleport, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do this photography. A tragic yet stirring scene filled the world island, while the isolated American continent remained motionless. Some within the provisional federal government outside New York City were keenly aware of the delicate situation and attempted to deploy Air Force fighter jets as a concrete demonstration of their stance. However, the local separatist unsurprisingly spread to the military. Everyone knows that power grows out of the barrel of a gun, and the separatist alliance of states first targeted the National Guard and then the Federal Army. The U.S. military was now divided among various factions, each harboring its own agenda. Generals hailing from conglomerates and military families, sensing the impending chaos, tightened their grip on the military, viewing it as the private property and a key to future dominance. In such a time, who cared about aliens? Even some enthusiastic soldiers who wanted to emulate other nations were stopped by their officers. Air Force pilots were precious and difficult to train, one less meant a point of weakness. Thus, the entire world once again saw the ugly face of America. The once world hegemon and beacon of civilization was not only collaborating with aliens but also failing to show any resistance in times of crisis. Even the most loyal of its followers would jump ship. Just as the scene unfolded over Eurasia at that moment, the nations of the world united behind the Eastern power, jointly confronting a crisis that threatened humanity. As the sun rose in the east and set in the west, the title of world supremacy returned to this ancient nation. America had been completely defeated, from within and without. Aboard the macro ship, Nick Fury, held in Goo's grasp, observed countless fighter jets approaching below through the ship's radar, but not a single American flag was displayed. Why? Why did it turn out like this? This was completely different from his plan. Shouldn't the macro be tricked into fighting the SWIE, with both sides suffering, while America reaps the benefits? How could the Eastern power seize the opportunity to unify the world, pretending to lead humanity against alien invaders? This role clearly belonged to America. No, this isn't real, Nick Fury suddenly struggled, screaming. This isn't the Earth I know, nigga, you're making so much noise. Goo clenched his fist, and a pool of blood splattered from his palm. There was a soft crack. Nick Fury, the king of secret agents, former ruler of SHIELD, the pride of African American Eagle, was brutally crushed to pieces by the aliens he had invited. Black Boiled Egg died with hatred. It's a shame he didn't live to see the moment of America's utter destruction. But that doesn't matter, as many American patriots will see that moment come for him. A bunch of bugs. Kill them. Goo shook off the rotten meat in his hand and shouted the command to the Macro people on the spaceship. Open fire. It feels a bit like a finale, but it wasn't. There's still a lot of plot to be written. Chapter 322, the spaceship crashes into North America, igniting the flames of civil war. Following Goo's shouting, the Macro aboard the spacecraft quickly reached their combat positions. Their cannons, large and small, began charging. The central control system captured the flight paths of the various nations' fighters and locked onto them one by one. But just before they could fire, the SHIE spaceships and the ring fortresses stationed on Earth launched their first wave of attacks. The Macro aboard the spacecraft all smiled scornfully at the tiny beams of light shooting down from below. Just this little thing, you expect it to penetrate our shield? Let it come. The Macro didn't even increase the power of their energy shields, simply waiting for the attack. Then, they watched helplessly as the thin, tiny lasers, tiny compared to their own ship, pierced the shield. With a whisper, the yellow lasers easily pierced a Macro ship's shield, slicing through its hull like swords. The residual force continued, penetrating deep into the ship, finally exploding within, erupting in a blazing ball flame. The Macro people were stunned, their faces filled with astonishment and confusion. Why? Why isn't the shield working? When did our spacecraft become so easy to shoot at will? Below the spacecraft, the SHIED's attack successfully penetrated. Although the enemy spacecraft was too large to see its effects, it boosted the morale of the soldiers from all nations. Kill those aliens, spread out, we're attacking the east, don't crowd together, remember your formation. I suggest opening the communication channels and letting SHIED take unified command. The pilots of the Russian-made fighter planes provided a valuable assist. Before SHIED could even speak, they had already communicated the proposal to the fighters from all nations in clear text. They were all professional soldiers, well aware of the importance of battlefield command. Now faced with a formidable enemy, SHIED was their only hope of defeating the aliens. The military headquarters of each nation remained silent for a moment before issuing the order to the frontline soldiers. Open the communication channels and accept SHIED's command. Thus, the Eastern power represented by SHIED became the de facto leader of Earth. After the system within the ring fortress assumed command, the fighters from all nations regained their order. At that moment, the Macro ships launched a frantic counterattack. The mountain-sized craft was riddled with cannons, and lasers blazed in the sky. The SHIE fortresses and ships accelerated their counterattack. The Macro ships exploded internally, and the hull began to shake slightly. The fighting was fierce, and pilots from all nations were injured. Lin Hao floated far away from the battlefield, silently filming the battle and broadcasting it to humanity worldwide. In space, Carol's immobilization spell wore off. She rushed back to Earth, witnessing the fierce battle raging over Eurasia and Lin Hao, who had remained aloof. So she flew over. Gazing at Lin Hao, who stood atop a white cloud, Carol shouted, "Why didn't you take action?" She had witnessed Lin Hao destroy a Kree army with a single wave of his hand. A mere Macro ship, he could easily destroy. Lin Hao glanced at her and said lightly, "The soldiers have to personally experience the battle with foreign enemies." Huh? Carol couldn't understand. They will die. This is the difference between our two countries and two nations. You are expecting a savior, and we only lack a guide. Lin Hao's voice was not loud, and it was not even recorded by the camera in his hand, but it was clearly imprinted in Carol's mind. You promote fatalism, constantly telling the people to pray for a savior, but never telling them that they possess immense power within themselves. They simply lack a leader to guide them. We're different. We teach the people to strive for self-improvement, not to wait or rely on others, but to bravely forge ahead in the face of difficulties. Even if it means encountering setbacks or even suffering, we should grit our teeth and charge forward. I can indeed destroy this group of enemies with a wave of my hand, but without this experience, a warrior facing stronger foes in the future will only feel anxious and complacent, pinning all their hopes on saviors like me, forgetting their own limitless potential. Lin Hao turned and said solemnly to Carol, "The world needs heroes, but not superheroes. Heroes can inspire the people, leading them to emulate them, forming the power of example, thus enabling the entire community to progress. The path of a superhero is unique, and the people know they can't become a superhero through study and hard work. Besides giving the superheroes a little smug satisfaction, it only makes the people more dependent on them, crying help when problems arise. Of course, this is a deliberate effort by the American leadership, a result they welcome, unwavering self-improvement, forging ahead courageously, and undaunted by any hardship. History and reality have proven countless times that the Chinese people are the greatest nation on earth. Despite their different cultural backgrounds, Carol understood Lin Hao's words. She naturally wouldn't admit that the great United States was on the wrong track, much less believe that the American people were completely worthless. What a joke. Can they learn and replicate your superpowers? Of course, Lin Hao laughed. Besides the cheats used to break the Marvel Universe's blockade, the power systems Lin Hao gained from outside the box could be disseminated for his compatriots to learn from, especially those that were authentic Eastern cultural products. This is another significant difference between Eastern and Western cultures. Western culture emphasizes bloodline theory, tracing any great power and noble character back to a once noble family. The poor, however, are labeled greedy, stingy, and ugly. Eastern culture, on the other hand, values self-cultivation, offering teachings to all, from the humblest to the humblest, and the common people's daily lives are all part of the Dao. While there were information disparities and resource monopolies caused by status, the idea that kings, princes, generals, and ministers are not born with a single species had already taken root, and the vast majority of people accepted the principle of equality of character for all. Alright, I'll see if you'll do anything. Furious, Carol stopped trying to help and stared intently at the sanctimonious Lin Hao. Lin Hao ignored her. With the technology currently at SHIE's disposal, destroying the macro ship was a piece of cake. This battle was more of an educational exercise, giving the soldiers a foretaste of what they would inevitably encounter in StarCraft. It also offered the Eastern superpower an opportunity to legitimately dominate the world. Seeing the increasing losses of fighter planes from various nations, the fighting spirit of the soldiers was ignited, and each fought bravely. SHIE held back no longer. The lasers shot out, no longer thin and small, but suddenly grew thicker and longer. A full-powered blast from the ring fortress pierced a macro ship, destroying one of its engines. Gu on the ship was furious. Damn you bugs. Everyone abandon ship. Show these backward native bugs the might of the macro. The macro's dominance of the universe has never been in their spacecraft or technology, but in their sturdy physiques and formidable superpowers. They resemble true barbarians. Hatch doors suddenly opened around the spaceship, and towering macro leaped out, their wings flapping. Their horse-faced, broad mouths let out deafening roars, and they swung their long tails toward the Earthling fighter planes. Hand-to-hand combat? Hurrah! 1,000 nano-armored pilots from Mao excitedly charged forward. As the leader, the Spear Bureau naturally wouldn't let its underlings advance alone. The next moment, a floating fairy mountain rose from the land of China. A sea of clouds swirled, mountains loomed, and clear springs gurgled amidst the lush greenery. Green hills and emerald waters flowed, and among the exotic flowers and plants, rare and exotic animals roamed. Suddenly, a dragon's roar echoed, and giant dragons in red, orange, yellow, and green soared into the sky. The Azure Dragon, acting like a leader, charged forward, shouting, "Brothers, follow me. Slay these filthy counterfeits." The imposing eastern dragons, each 100 feet long, bared their fangs and claws, soared through the clouds, charging towards the counterfeits. The macro people, barely a dozen meters tall, were nothing more than a pile of crudely crafted figurines before these genuine products, over 300 meters tall. What kind of monster is this? Gu roared in horror. Why are there such monsters on this planet? What the hell? The Azure Dragon swung its tail at the macro leader, sneering, "You idiot. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself?" Then, it opened its mouth and unleashed a pillar of fire, enveloping the shoddy figurines. Wailing cries filled the air, and the macro people, like tortoises being trampled by elephants, were defeated one after another without even a single round. Their supernatural powers allowed them to spit fire and water, but they were nothing compared to the genuine products. This sudden turn of events stunned the pilots from various nations on the battlefield, as well as the Earthlings watching the live stream. The dragon is real, oh my god, China really has dragons. It's not a lie, haha, that's our Chinese dragon, Shenlong, charge. Slay these ugly imposters. The civilians were preoccupied with wonder and excitement, while the leaders of various nations felt a renewed sense of powerlessness, secretly lamenting, how could this country's heritage be so profound? Technology had already enabled them to build spacecraft, and now a transcendent force had emerged capable of taming Shenlong. From now on, Earth's position as the overlord might be even more secure than America's once was. As the Shenlong charged forward, a group of figures suddenly emerged from the celestial mountain. Jiang Ming rode on clouds, while behind him, Chen Lu and the 5 Tao brothers stood on their swords. Behind them were the outstanding agents selected from the Divine Spear Bureau to train at New Shushan. Shushan disciples, follow me to slay demons and monsters, Jiang Ming shouted. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of sharp swords unsheathed, soaring into the air, hurtling towards the now defeated Macru people. Holy crap! Sword immortals. There are even sword immortals. I'll give you a bag of spicy noodles. Please tell me where the mountain gate is. Woohoo, I need to learn sword control, stingy. Just 1 bag of spicy noodles? I'll give you 5, we've calculated it. It looks like this immortal mountain took off from the land of Bashu, Shushan. It must be Shushan, I said Liaozi Shudao Mountain, right? Now that's right, my wife's right. Shouldn't we buy our tickets? Yes, 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 buy tickets. Buy tickets. As the dragons and sword immortals appeared one after another, the aliens were completely at a disadvantage. The Earthlings watching the battle finally relaxed their anxieties, and those watching the live stream online regained their energy. What the hell, Carol, floating beside Lin Hao, ready to watch the fun, gasped in astonishment. Why are you, damn it, why do they have so many transcendents? Shit, why are all their transcendents so easy to talk to? They wouldn't perform bloody sacrifices, wouldn't wreak havoc in the capital, and instead would help cultivate new transcendents. They were all Earthlings, so why were they treated differently? A home that accumulates good will be blessed with good fortune, Lin Hao said, his voice piercing Carol's heart like a knife. Don't you know what the American people have done? Do you really think you can gain everything through plunder and deception? To kill, one must first destroy the heart. The great demon king remained true to his original aspirations. On the distant battlefield, as Shenlong and the Shushan disciples joined them, the Macru people gradually dwindled, scorched by fire, struck by lightning, or even worse, torn apart by flying swords. As their leader, Gu Shen, Lin Hao specifically ordered him to stay, as he possessed more crucial intelligence. Across America, all factions were watching the first battle between Earthlings and aliens. They couldn't ignore it, as it was the only thing being broadcast live on television and the internet. America, with its provisional federal government outside New York, the alliance of 4 southwestern states, the alliance of 3 southeastern states, and local mutual aid organizations in the central and northern parts of the country, has become a multifaceted force. There's no hope now. The Chinese actually won, fuck. Those yellow-skinned monkeys are hiding so well, great America deserves this glory. American elite eagles from all sides sighed in frustration, beat their chests, and raged in impotence, then erupted in curses. If America hadn't suffered so much trouble in the past 2 or 3 years, they would have been the commanders leading Earth civilization against the aliens, completely consolidating their position as a beacon of civilization. If America hadn't split, they could at least participate in this battle and, afterward, take as much credit as possible through shameless propaganda. But life has no ifs. One side is like the rising sun, the other like the setting sun. Ebb and flow, that's history. No, we still have a chance, at the temporary Federation headquarters outside New York. A general with a star on his shoulder raved, "Look, this ship is about to crash. If it crashes close to America, we can mobilize all our forces and seize the spoils. Other countries aren't a concern. As long as the SHIEA doesn't start a war, we can at least get a piece of the aliens, then don't crash outside the country. Just pray it lands on the Central Plains. God, please bless America once again." As if hearing their prayers, the Macru ship, unable to maintain stability after losing an engine, actually tilted eastward, poised to cross the Pacific and crash into the American continent. Carol looked up and suddenly blocked Lin Haodong's path, her vigilant eyes fixed on him. Clearly, she understood the significance of this wrecked ship to America today. America was now torn apart, only a few steps away from completely abandoning the Federation. If a massive advantage were offered to them right now, the domestic conglomerates and military families would surely return to the table to divide the spoils. As long as they could sit down and negotiate again, America wouldn't be completely divided, its current situation would persist. People with ulterior motives gathered at the table to divide the world's spoils. Hadn't the federal system always been like this? He, Lin Hao, seeing through her thoughts, pointed his finger. The massive spaceships in the sky suddenly disintegrated, plummeting towards American territory. Large, intact chunks of hull landed in the southwest and southeast, while those in the northeast were engulfed in flames. Fuck, Carol was about to rush over to destroy the shattered hull, but was restrained by the immobilization spell, unable to move. The final spark that would ignite the American Civil War had finally been ignited. The Southwest Mutual and the Florida Confederacy, having benefited from this, would never remain silent. Carol, having clearly seen the consequences of Lin Hao's actions, was seething with rage. "Don't worry, your beloved America is still here, just in a few more parts," Lin Hao said with a grin. "I'm curious, which part will you be loyal to in the future?" Chapter 323. The fire is cut off and civil war breaks out. As the Macro spaceship disintegrated and crashed toward America, the people of that land frantically rushed out of their homes and fled for open areas. People's joys and sorrows are not shared. While the masses scrambled to escape, the American leadership, stunned and distraught, reacted differently. At the Provisional Federal Government headquarters outside New York, politicians and generals controlled by financial conglomerates, after reviewing computer analysis of the debris location, erupted in outrage. "Fuck. All the pieces that weren't on fire are in the south, damn it. Has Yahweh abandoned the Jews too? The disintegration should have been random, with uncertain landing locations, but the good stuff had somehow avoided the northeast." Debris rained down on America. The large, non-flaming pieces fell south, while those that hit the northeast were all small, flaming meteorites. Nothing good came of it except dead bodies and sinkholes. This made the squids doubt that their one true god had abandoned them. Meanwhile, the southern forces rejoiced. Gazing at the vast swathes of wreckage in the sky, the engineers at Houston Aircraft and Lockheed Martin, controlled by Texas and California conglomerates, were eager to try, like gourmets clutching their knives and forks awaiting their meal. Hurry up, drop it. Houston had suffered severe damage in the previous bombing, with numerous factories destroyed. Los Angeles, the headquarters of the Southwest Alliance, had recently been scavenged by Indian spirits, and the population had plummeted, leaving plenty of space. No need to expropriate land, because entire families were gone, whole and intact. As Americans watched, horrified and expectant, the macro wreckage slammed into American territory with terrifying kinetic energy. Cities crumbled, buildings collapsed, and rivers of blood flowed. Ultimately, it was Americans who bore the brunt of the impact. While they didn't join the fight against the aliens, they bore the suffering brought on by the invasion for the entire planet. A sense of participation was palpable, wasn't it? The Provisional Federal Government immediately declared to the nation that any alien spacecraft wreckage that had crashed on American soil belonged to the entire Federation, and that no state could appropriate it. The world once again witnessed the Jewish people's shamelessness and greed. Despite not participating in the conflict, they were the first to seize the spoils. All nations then turned their attention to the Eastern power, which had regained its position as world leader. However, rather than engage in a verbal battle with the United States, the Eastern power directly attacked the United States. After this alien invasion, humanity has deeply realized the dangers of the interstellar age, but dangers and opportunities coexist. To build a community with a shared future for mankind, my country proposes the formation of the Alliance of Earth Civilizations. Also, to protect our common home planet, my country advocates the elimination of traditional bioenergy and the adoption of efficient, clean new energy sources. All nations joining the Alliance of Earth Civilizations will receive technical guidance, be allowed to pay to integrate into the new energy network, and, after inspection, be granted space on our spacecraft. The world was once again stunned. The new leader had immediately established new rules for the world, both politically and economically. In short, nations on Earth must join the Alliance of Earth Civilizations led by the new boss in order to gain access to new energy sources at a price. If they behave well and obey, they can even secure a ticket to the stars. Anyone with even a passing understanding of international politics knows that America's continued global dominance for over half a century stems from its massive military power, controlling the world's most critical energy source, oil. By pegging oil to the US dollar, it has exploited these two lifelines, financially and energy-wise, and wielded unchecked control over the global economy. While exploiting humanity and sucking the world's blood, it uses this system to shift the burden of the inevitable economic crises of the capitalist world. The new boss has simply abandoned traditional energy sources like oil and is politically pressuring nations around the world to make a statement. To secure a ticket to the stars, any right-thinking nation knows the right path. While this ticket may be a pie in the sky, or perhaps unrealized for many years, hope is better than no hope. Otherwise, will America be swept into the dustbin of history along with the remnants of the old era? Furthermore, the Earth Civilization Alliance only accepts membership from nations with clear sovereignty. This move, cutting off the fire from the bottom of the pot, completely ignited the explosive power of America. The day the new boss issued a statement, Wall Street stocks plummeted, unstoppable. The world knew America was doomed. The petrodollar hegemony had completely collapsed. The U.S. stock market, ceased to exist. The Jewish financial conglomerates were stunned. While they controlled some industries, the Jewish tradition was to make easy money. In the past, for security, they controlled the American political power, the military, and, most importantly, the right to issue currency, devising a foolproof strategy of shifting risk to the world. But now, someone had broken free from their framework. No matter how you plot, I'll crush you with one blow. Having lost their financial weapon, the Jews found themselves back in the same predicament of powerlessness they had faced before, the mustache. Seeing this, the Southwest Alliance no longer hesitated and immediately announced the establishment of a formal Southwest government, no longer the secretive mutual aid organization they had previously maintained. They, too, wanted to catch up with the new era of the Earth Civilization Alliance. To meet the requirements for membership, the new regime, calling itself the Southwest Confederation, officially declared war on the provisional federal government in the Northeast. The Jews, facing a bankruptcy crisis, naturally sought to strike back. Southwest Confederation engineers removed the intact weapons from the wreckage of the Macro spacecraft, installed them on a new mobile platform, and swooped eastward from the Western Plateau, marking the beginning of the American Civil War. In the early stages of the war, the central states west of the Mississippi River surrendered. These agricultural and pastoral states were unable to resist the Southwest Confederation, which had a developed arms manufacturing industry and benefited from alien technology. Simply to maintain their existing power and status, they joined the Confederation. Americans were ultimately accustomed to the federal system. From the outset, the four southwestern states had strongly advocated for the independence of each state, with no intention of adopting a centralized system. This made the Southwest Confederation quite attractive to the central states. After all, it was the same old confederation under a different name. Moreover, they also hated the Jews who recklessly exploited agriculture and animal husbandry with the weapon of finance. The Jewish financial groups in the Northeast panicked. The war had just begun, yet they were already facing a global enemy and surrounded by enemies. Fortunately, they were no pushovers. They quickly used their wealth to build the first line of defense east of the Mississippi River, and then used the Appalachian Mountains to build a permanent defense line to secure their eastern base. Meanwhile, to intensify the American fighting, the Great Devil sent his new henchman, the Indian boy Ericum, to the scene once again. He brazenly erected the banner of the Indian Republic at the junction of Wyoming and Nebraska. He used his army, which had expanded to 500,000 dead Indians, and mobilized the Indian descendants he had gathered to form the first unified Indian nation in history. Chapter 324 Ran overcomes Neon. Hell's Kitchen, New York. Once a place of chaos and crime, a den of thieves New Yorkers shunned, a disgrace to the city. All the derogatory terms used for this neighborhood weren't descriptive, but rather literal. It was once a vibrant arena for superheroes and supervillains, enjoying considerable exposure across America, Earth, and even the universe. Unfortunately, in today's era of rapid change, it no longer deserves the spotlight. 2 years ago, the true Captain Steve Rogers conducted a pioneering social experiment here, resulting in the neighborhood being purged by the American elite. However, capitalism failed to seize this prime New York location. Under the influence of the American elite and higher dimensional consciousness, The purged Hell's Kitchen once again became a hotbed of crime. Lan Kenian's safe house apartment remained open, but Lin Hao, the head of the SHIEA's Americas branch, gave him no missions. As other teams within the Americas branch were reactivated with their missions, Lan Kenian seemed forgotten. A dormant deep sea. When the SHIE spaceship took off, he wasn't sure whether his secret had been discovered by Zheng Xian or Lin Hao. But when the macro spaceship landed on Earth and was violently destroyed by SHIE, he was finally certain he had been exposed. Although Lan Kenian didn't know what had gone wrong, after the macro spaceship appeared, as a professional agent, he wouldn't allow himself to take any chances. So, he disappeared, using the same method he had 43 years ago. Director, he's missing. Zhao Yi, who led the team infiltrating Hell's Kitchen, searched Lan Kenian's apartment but couldn't find him, so he had to report to Lin Hao. Interesting, this superpower is ridiculous. Lin Hao chuckled on the other end of the den mushy. Don't worry, no matter how he disappears, he'll definitely find a way back to where he started. Lan Kenian, who was being talked about by Lin Hao, instantly traveled thousands of kilometers to a strictly confidential base in downtown Los Angeles. This was the newly established alien technology research base of the Southwest Federation, specializing in dismantling the wreckage of macro spacecraft that landed in the western and southern United States. Lan Kenian appeared at the base as if he were no one, strutting toward the wreckage of the macro ship. None of the researchers and guards around him noticed his presence. He reached the wreckage of the macro ship's main control center and approached the console. Ignoring the researchers cautiously exploring nearby, he extended a hand, which transformed into a macro claw. He reached the console, and a spherical, sapphire blue bead appeared on his claw. The surrounding researchers were shocked. What's going on? Who moved it? Why the sudden reaction? Who is it? A spy from the Eastern Federation. Ignoring the commotion, Lan Kenian took what he wanted and vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. The next moment, Lan Kenian appeared in the icy Himalayas, donning the winter clothing he had brought with him from his backpack and trudging through the snow. He toyed with a sapphire blue bead in his hand, grinning. I've waited for 43 years, thinking I'd never get my hands on it. Fate plays such a trick on me. Following the route he remembered, Lan Kenian made his way back to the mountain stream where he had fallen. On January 30, 1968, SHIELD organized the rescue of Nazi scientists. Not only was Nick Fury, a rookie, involved, but also Shen Ran, a Chinese agent who had already joined SHIELD at the time. Both of them survived. In Nick Fury's memory, he fell alone into the mountainside and encountered Makun, a macro trapped within. However, in reality, he and Shen Ran escaped the Winter Soldier's pursuit and fell into the mountainside together. Makun wasn't the only macro trapped within the mountainside, there was also another macro named Nian. In Marvel's bizarre creation, this macro named Nian has a legendary story. He roamed the Chinese lands over 2,000 years ago, and was instrumental in the Chinese custom of driving away the Nian beast during the Lunar New Year. You see, not only does the worship of the dragon totem originate from the macro people, but even the customs of celebrating the spring festival are also of their origin. Marvel's editors seem to be trying to single-handedly capture thousands of years of Chinese culture within their own purview. The comics featuring these concepts aren't from the 1960s or 1970s, but from 2013, demonstrating the ongoing battle for publicity. Two people experience a shared experience, but afterward, Nick Fury no longer remembers Shen Ran as a central figure in the incident, and his first encounter with Shen Ran has become a different event. After hours of trekking, Lan Kenian finally reached the same mountain stream. The cracks there had long since been covered by ice and snow. This proved no problem for him. He ripped open his shirt, revealing his intact chest. However, seconds later, a large, crimson hole appeared, its edges crisscrossed with spiderweb-like cracks. A beating heart could clearly be seen within the hole. A bright red heart throbbed as Lan Kenian thrust the sapphire bead into the hole. The moment the two touched, his chest glowed a dazzling red. Flesh and blood grew wildly, enveloping the sapphire bead, forming a hideous mass. The sapphire bead seemed embedded in his flesh, emitting a red and blue glow. Suddenly, Shen Ran vanished from the snow and reappeared in a crevice deep within the mountain. The ice above him showed no sign of breaking, yet he had plunged deep into the mountain. Two dragons curled up within the mountain's depths, noticing the intruder. "You," Makun said, unable to recognize Lan Kenian, for he had already assumed two different identities. However, The macro saint, who had bestowed his power upon him, immediately sensed a familiar aura emanating from him. "It's you, Shenran." Yes, Lan Keenian was the Shenran of yesteryear. In a corner of the mountain, Lin Hao, having set up the tables and chairs, picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for Zheng Xian, who was standing beside him. He smiled and said, "See? I told him he'd return to the starting point. How did you find out about him?" Zheng Xian couldn't hide his curiosity. "I had Ancient One use the time stone to look into his past and future, but nothing was found." The editorial department. "I found the manuscript for Captain America, Nails, and after comparing it, I found the closest resemblance to this one." Lin Hao took a sip of tea. "Why?" Zheng Xian also looked at the manuscript, but found no problems. "Birthday?" Lin Hao looked doubtful about Zheng Xian's intelligence. After all, this guy's birthday is January 30th, 1968. Zheng Xian's eyes narrowed instantly, the same expression as an elderly person on the subway checking their phone. He said speechlessly, "I remember a few other colleagues at the bureau have birthdays on that day. Can that be used as evidence?" "No," Lin Hao said calmly, spreading his hands. "But I'm not a judge. What evidence do I need?" Zheng Xian was speechless. When Mark Ru's men arrived, the others remained silent, but this guy ran away. "He confessed everything," Lin Hao said with a confident look on his face, "and his name is too straightforward, Lan Keenian, Ran K Nian. He doesn't hide his hatred for Nian at all." The character Shenran comes from Captain America 4, The Iron Nail, a comic book published in 2013. He is the first villain to completely defeat Steve Rogers. The Marvel editor's intentions are clear. Chapter 325, The Villain Iron Nail Who Can Destroy Captain America is born. Deep within the Himalayas, two macro men and a Chinese from Earth remained locked in a standoff, unaware of two Huaxia men sipping tea and watching the fun in a corner. "Yes, it's me," Shenran chuckled. "You didn't expect me to come back, did you, little brat?" Makun was about to explode. But Nian stopped him, a playful smile on his long, horse-like face. "So, today you're here to fulfill your promise and rescue us, haha." Shenran suddenly laughed, announcing, "Yes, I'll get you out." Before the two macro men, trapped for over 1,000 years, could react with surprise or excitement, Shenran changed the subject, but not on the way you want. As he spoke, he ripped open his shirt, revealing a sapphire bead on his chest. "Holy bead," Nian's face finally changed, exclaiming in shock. "How did it get into your hands?" "Ha ha ha ha, wait until you become my slaves, and I'll show you how." Laughing, Shenran manipulated the macro people's sacred artifact with his mind, and the sapphire bead shone brightly, striking Makun and Nian, who lay crouched within the mountain's belly. The beam of light tried to pull the two monsters over, but the magic circle within the mountain was trapping the two macro people. Who left this magic circle? Lin Hao, who was drinking tea and watching the show in the corner, turned to ask Zheng Xian. "I don't know." Zheng Xian shook his head. "Aren't you an immortal who has lived for 2,000 years? Lin Hao was surprised. "You've seen the manuscript, and you're still asking me?" Zheng Xian glanced at him. "The key is that it's not drawn in the manuscript." Lin Hao spread his hands. "Is the superpower of making wishes so perverted?" Zheng Xian was still in disbelief and pondered. 43 years ago, he made a wish for himself to have a new identity, and then this superpower directly erased his past, giving him an identity that is so real and verifiable that even the Infinity Stones can't find any flaws. Not just 43 years ago, just today, when Zhao Yu was about to capture him, he made a new wish and changed his identity again. Lin Hao corrected. "Will he be able to disappear from sight at any time? How will you control him?" Zheng Xian knew Lin Hao intended to use this tool who could defeat Steve Rogers head-on, but he was also worried he might overdo it. After all, this wish-granting ability was too unreasonable. Before, there wasn't really any good solution unless I used my editing privileges. Lin Hao hadn't mentioned the demon contract, but now he's come to realize that, beyond just restraint, it will serve as an effective means of protecting the contractor and countering the Marvel Universe's consciousness. As the base universe expands, it will sooner or later come into direct contact with the Marvel Universe's consciousness, and all characters from this universe will be subject to its influence. With this realization, Lin Hao no longer casually contracts henchmen. To become his henchman, one must first be vetted. Now there's a way to locate him, no matter how many times he changes identities. Zheng Xian glanced at the sapphire bead on Shenran's chest, a sudden realization dawning on him. Did you tamper with it? Lin Hao nodded and replied, through Gu's memories, I've discovered this bead is a sacred artifact of the Macro people, wielded by the strongest of the Macro civilization for generations. This time, he brought the bead to Earth to help the extraordinary dragon and this creature called Nian escape. This creature called Nian is a holy son of their Macro civilization, similar to the Super Skrulls of the Skrulls, both rare species that appear only once every millennia, possessing incredible superpowers. In a corner of the mountain, two people drank tea and watched the show. On the stage, Shenren concentrated, pulling with all his might. The magic circle that trapped Makun and Nian was, after all, very old, and its remaining magic power was minimal. After a period of tug-of-war, the macro artifact finally consumed all its energy. No, Makun, seeing himself about to fall into Shenren's control, was filled with shock and anger. Damn Earthlings, previously, trapped within the mountain, he'd lost his freedom, but at least his mind was free. Now, he was being controlled by Shenren, wielding the power of a divine artifact, a slave without any freedom. In comparison, it would be better to remain trapped within the mountain. With a long lifespan of the Macro people, they'd eventually outlast the magic circle's depletion. Beside him, Nian didn't cry out. His large eyes fixed on Shenren, preparing a deadly counterattack. Seconds later, the magic circle was destroyed, and the light from the sacred bead locked onto the two Macro people, reeling them back. In the blink of an eye, Nian appeared before Shenren. Die, little devil, Nian roared. He thrust out a sharp finger and, just as he had 43 years ago, stabbed Shenren in the chest. This time, Nian wasn't granting power, he was aiming to take the life of this damned Earthling. Shenren, prepared for this, scoffed, old bastard, I've waited a full 43 years for this day. One moment, Shenren was still standing on the ground, the next, he suddenly appeared above Nian's head. His right hand suddenly transformed into a razor-sharp sword, its blade gleaming with a cold gleam as it thrust towards the horse-faced skull. With a whirring sound, the blade sliced through Nian's flesh and skull, piercing easily into his skull. Shenren was stunned for a moment, but he reacted quickly. He immediately activated the beads on his chest, increasing the binding force and, while Nian was injured, engulfed him within the sacred beads. In the corner, Zheng Xian blinked and turned to look at Lin Hao. You did this, Lin Hao smiled. This is the tool that could defeat Steve Rogers. It would be a shame not to let him put his surplus value to good use. Two Steves, one a fake you created, and the other you've indirectly brainwashed. Which one do you want to destroy? Zheng Xian asked curiously. Who said there were only two? Lin Hao muttered, sipping his tea. Do you believe there'll be another one soon? That one's even more interesting. Zheng Xian couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. Are you trying to get together for a mahjong table? He thought. America has been torn apart by his mischief. What does the representative of the American spirit mean to me? The two, sipping tea and watching the show, watched Shenren successfully subdue the two Macro people and vanish silently. Dropping to the ground, Shenren stared blankly at the sharp blade transformed into his right hand, muttering to himself, could it be that after being trapped for so many years, his strength has diminished? Just as he had been able to erase the entire universe's memory of his past after using his unreasonable wish-granting power, so now that he could tamper with the secrets of heaven, no matter what Lin Hao did, a being of Shenren's level would remain undetected. Never mind, at least it was a close call. Shenren breathed a sigh of relief, feeling an unprecedented sense of relief. Ever since falling into this mountain 43 years ago, Shenren, seemingly gifted with unimaginable superpowers, possessed a deep desire for control and constantly wary of the two Macro. Over these years, he relived his childhood, adolescence, and youth in his former homeland under a new identity. Leveraging the knowledge and experience he gained, he successfully entered the SHIE agency, successfully completing missions and rising through the ranks. Later, he chose to join the American branch, leveraging his past with Nick Fury to secretly forge a partnership. Through intelligence exchanges, he achieved several significant feats, but ultimately sold out SHIE's American branch. As he told Nick Fury, after the events of 43 years ago, Shenren no longer belonged to any nation or faction. He lived solely for himself. I've tweaked the way Iron Nail's superpowers are used. In the comics, he only had the ability to grant wishes, but he still used his body as a weapon in hand-to-hand combat. So cheesy. Such a ridiculously unrealistic superpower was wasted. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.